The crown wasn't hers to wear. Eveline stood frozen in the doorway, one hand pressed against the cool marble wall, the other resting instinctively on her swollen belly. Through the crack in the door, she watched a woman, that woman, lift the Duchess's crown from its velvet case and settle it onto her own dark hair. The servants didn't flinch. They adjusted the angle like they'd done it 100 times before. And Alaric? Her husband stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching with the detached interest of a man admiring new furniture. The baby kicked once, hard. Eveline's breath caught. She'd spent months telling herself the whispers were lies, that the rumors about Celine Varel were nothing but court gossip meant to wound her. But lies don't wear your crown, and husbands who love you don't stand silent while another woman tries it on. This is how it ends, she thought, not with a fight, with a fitting. If you want to see how far a discarded duchess can fall or rise, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see just how far this story travels. The West Wing had always been too quiet. Eveline had noticed it first 3 weeks ago, when the Duke insisted really in that soft voice he used when he'd already decided, that she take her rest there. For the baby, he'd said, brushing a strand of golden hair from her face with a tenderness that felt rehearsed. You need peace, quiet, away from the chaos of court. She'd believed him then, or maybe she just wanted to. Now, walking these halls alone at 9 months pregnant, trailing her fingers along the cold marble walls to keep her balance, Eveline understood what quiet really meant. It meant isolation. It meant servants who wouldn't meet her eyes. It meant meals delivered on trays instead of eaten in the great hall. It meant her husband hadn't visited her chambers in 11 days. She'd counted. The evening light filtered through the tall windows in shades of burnt orange and deepening purple. Eveline paused at one, looking out over the duchy's gardens she'd redesigned herself when she first arrived as Alaric's bride. The white roses had been her idea. She thought they looked pure, hopeful. Now they just looked like gravestones. My lady, you shouldn't be walking so much in your condition. Eveline turned to find Martha, her oldest attendant, hurrying down the hall with that pinched expression she wore when she was worried, or hiding something. These days, Eveline couldn't tell the difference. I'm not an invalid, Martha. I'm pregnant. Yes, but what? I should stay in my room like a good little broodmare. The bitterness in her voice surprised even herself. Martha's face crumpled. That's not what I meant, my lady. The Duke wouldn't want you straining yourself. Eveline nearly laughed. The Duke doesn't want much of anything from me these days, except what I'm already giving him. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling the weight of it, the life inside. The air. The only reason she still mattered at all. Martha opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. Perhaps you should return to your chambers. I'll have cook send up that tea you like. I don't want tea. Eveline's voice came out sharper than intended. I want to walk in my own home without being herded back to my cage. My lady, please. But Eveline was already moving, her slippered feet silent on the marble. Martha called after her once more, then fell quiet. She knew better than to push. They all did. Eveline had learned that the hard way, learned that even the servants who'd once fawned over her now saw her as something fragile, temporary, replaceable. The word had been lurking in her mind for weeks, but she'd refused to name it until now. Replaceable. She turned a corner and stopped. Voices. Low and careful, coming from the blue receiving room, a chamber that should have been empty this time of evening. The door stood slightly ajar, a wedge of golden lamplight spilling into the dim hallway. Eveline's first instinct was to turn back. Whatever private conversation was happening behind that door wasn't meant for her ears. But something in the tone, the careful quiet of it, the way the voices dropped and rose like a tide, made her pause. She moved closer, each step deliberate and silent. The first voice she recognized immediately. Alaric, her husband. The Duke. Even after 3 years of marriage, his voice still carried that aristocratic smoothness, that cool authority that had first drawn her to him, back when she'd been young and stupid enough to mistake control for strength. Handled delicately, he was saying. The court is watching. Any misstep now could, I understand perfectly. The second voice was female, younger than Eveline by perhaps a year or two, cultured, confident. You needn't worry about my discretion, Your Grace. I've been nothing but patient. Eveline's blood went cold. Celine Virel. She'd heard the name whispered for months now, always in passing, always quickly silenced when Eveline entered a room. Celine Virel, the Baron's daughter from the northern estates. Celine Virel, who'd been seen riding with the Duke on 3 separate occasions. Celine Virel, who some of the crueler courtiers claimed was everything Eveline was not. Dark-haired, sharp-tongued, unburdened by pregnancy. Eveline had told herself it meant nothing. Men had riding companions, political alliances, friends. But friends didn't speak in that tone, and husbands didn't answer in that one. "It won't be much longer," Alaric said, and something in his voice made Eveline's stomach twist. "Once the child is born and she's recovered, and if she doesn't recover?" The silence that followed was worse than any answer. Eveline pressed herself against the wall, one hand covering her mouth to muffle the sound of her breathing. The baby shifted inside her, uncomfortable, sensing her distress the way children always seem to know. "That's a dark thought, Celine." "Is it? Women die in childbirth every day, even duchesses." A pause. "Especially duchesses who've outlived their usefulness." Another silence. This one stretched so long that Eveline thought she might scream just to break it. When Alaric finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "We'll address that if it becomes necessary. For now, we wait. Patience, as you said." "I've been patient for 8 months, Alaric, watching her parade around with your child in her belly while you wait," he interrupted, firmer now. "As we agreed." Footsteps. Someone was moving inside the room. Eveline should have run, should have fled back to her chambers before they discovered her eavesdropping, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Her feet had grown roots. The door swung open wider. Eveline didn't move, didn't breathe. From her angle, pressed against the wall just beyond the doorframe's edge, she could see inside now. See them. Alaric stood near the window, his back to her, hands clasped behind him, in that way he had when he was thinking. He wore the deep blue coat she'd commissioned for him last winter, before everything had gone wrong, before the whispers had started. And Celine... Eveline's heart stopped. Celine Virel stood before the ornate mirror that dominated the room's east wall. She was beautiful in the way that sharp things are beautiful. All angles and precision, dark hair swept up in an elaborate style that must have taken her maid an hour to arrange. She wore a gown of deep crimson that would have been scandalous on anyone less confident. But it wasn't the gown that made Eveline's world tilt, it was the crown, her crown. The Duchess's crown. The one that had been placed on Eveline's head the day she married Alaric, the one she'd worn at state functions and festivals, the one that symbolized everything she was supposed to be. Celine held it in both hands, examining it the way one might examine a piece of jewelry before purchase. Then, slowly, almost reverently, she lifted it and placed it on her own head. The fit was perfect. Eveline watched as Celine adjusted the angle, tilting her chin up to catch the light. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Not triumphant, not cruel, just satisfied, like she'd been waiting for this moment all her life. "It suits you." Alaric's voice was quiet, but it carried. He turned from the window now, watching Celine with an expression Eveline couldn't quite name. Approval? Affection? Or just the cold calculation of a man who'd already made his choice? Celine's smile widened. She turned from the mirror to face him directly, the crown still perched on her dark hair. "Does it?" Her voice held a challenge. "Tell me honestly, Alaric, do I look like a duchess?" He crossed the room in 3 long strides. For one terrible moment, Eveline thought he might kiss her. Instead, he reached up and adjusted the crown slightly, straightening it with the careful attention of a man who knew its worth. "You look," he said quietly, "like exactly what this duchy needs." The baby kicked again, harder this time. Eveline pressed her hand against her belly, trying to soothe it, trying to soothe herself. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Except it was. She'd been so stupid, so blind, all those missed dinners, those canceled visits, those nights when Alaric claimed exhaustion from state business. They hadn't been about the duchy at all. They'd been about this. About her. About replacing Eveline before she'd even realized she was being replaced. "The court won't accept it easily," Celine was saying now, turning back to the mirror. She touched the crown lightly, possessively. "They'll call me a usurper, a homewrecker. Worse." The court will accept what I tell them to accept. Alaric's voice had gone hard. I am the Duke. My word is law. And Eveline? Eveline's breath caught in her throat. Eveline, Alaric said slowly, will do what's best for the duchy. She always has. That's why I chose her in the first place. She understood duty. Duty, Celine laughed, a bright, brittle sound. Is that what you call it? Marrying you, bearing your heir, and then being quietly set aside so you can install me in her place? I call it politics and survival. Alaric moved away from her, pacing now. You knew what this was from the beginning, Celine. Don't pretend otherwise. I'm not pretending anything. I'm simply clarifying terms. She removed the crown, holding it up to the light. When does she find out? When the time is right. And when is that exactly? After the birth? After she's recovered? Or after you've decided she's no longer useful? Celine's voice had taken on a harder edge. You're playing a dangerous game, Alaric. Eveline isn't as weak as you think. Eveline, he said flatly, is exactly as weak as she's allowed herself to become. She had every opportunity to be the Duchess this duchy needed. Instead, she chose to be, soft, sentimental, more concerned with her gardens and her charities than with actual power. She loves you. That, Alaric said, turning to face Celine fully, is precisely the problem. The words hit Eveline like a physical blow. She staggered back from the doorway, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle the sound that tried to escape. The marble wall was cold against her back. Cold and hard and real, unlike everything else in her life. My lady? Eveline spun around, heart hammering. Martha stood a few feet away, face pale, hands twisted in her apron. She'd followed, after all. Martha, But the words wouldn't come. Please, my lady, Martha whispered urgently, glancing toward the blue receiving room. You shouldn't be here. If they find you, they won't. Eveline's voice sounded strange to her own ears. Distant, hollow. Take me back to my chambers. Martha stepped forward quickly, offering her arm. Eveline took it, grateful for the support. Her legs felt unstable. Everything felt unstable. They moved down the hallway in silence, Martha supporting more of Eveline's weight than either of them would acknowledge. The baby had gone still, as if it too understood that something fundamental had broken. Behind them, the voices continued in the blue receiving room, making plans, discussing futures that didn't include her. Eveline's chambers were exactly as she'd left them, luxurious, comfortable, and utterly impersonal. Someone had lit the lamps while she was gone, casting warm light over furniture that had never quite felt like hers. 3 years she'd lived in this castle. 3 years as the Duke's wife. And still, these rooms felt like a hotel. Temporary lodging for a temporary guest. Martha helped her to the chair by the window, then hurried to pour water from the pitcher on the side table. Her hands shook slightly as she offered the glass. My lady, perhaps you should lie down. The shock... I'm not in shock. Eveline took the glass but didn't drink. I'm angry. Martha's eyes widened. In 3 years, she'd probably never heard Eveline admit to anger. Sadness, yes. Disappointment, but never anger. You have every right to be, my lady. Do I? Eveline set the glass down carefully, watching the water settle. Or have I given away that right along with everything else? My pride, my dignity, my husband. You didn't give him away. He was taken. Was he? Eveline looked up, meeting Martha's eyes. Or did I just make it easy? Martha opened her mouth, closed it, then sat down heavily in the opposite chair, a breach of protocol she never would have committed under normal circumstances. You've been a good duchess, she said quietly. Better than this duchy deserved. Have I? Eveline laughed, a harsh sound. A good duchess would have seen this coming, would have fought for her position, would have been more than a convenient womb and a pretty face at state dinners. You're carrying his heir, which makes me useful. Not loved, not valued, just useful. Eveline pressed both hands against her belly, feeling the life inside. And once this baby is born, what use am I then? The silence that followed was answer enough. Eveline stood abruptly, ignoring Martha's protests. She crossed to her writing desk, yanking open drawers until she found what she was looking for. The letters. All those letters she'd received over the past 8 months. Polite notes from courtiers she'd once considered friends, each one finding some excuse to decline her invitations, to skip her afternoon teas, to be otherwise engaged. She'd told herself they were giving her space, privacy during her confinement, but they'd known. All of them. They'd known what was coming and had already started choosing sides. How long? Eveline's voice was steady now, cold. How long have you known about Celine? Martha's face crumpled. My lady... How long? 6 months, Martha whispered. Maybe 7. The rumors started in the winter. 7 months. Eveline had been 4 months pregnant when Alaric had first brought Celine Virel to court. 4 months pregnant when he'd started planning her replacement. Why didn't you tell me? What could you have done? Martha stood, wringing her hands. You were pregnant, vulnerable. The Duke, he's powerful, my lady, and you... She trailed off, but Eveline heard the unspoken words anyway. And you are not. Who else knows? Everyone, Martha's voice broke. I'm sorry, my lady, but everyone knows. The whole court. They've been waiting to see what happens after the birth. Eveline turned back to the window, staring out at the darkening gardens. The white roses had vanished into shadow, indistinguishable from the night. They think I'll accept it, she said quietly. Don't they? They think I'll step aside gracefully, the dutiful wife making way for her replacement with dignity and grace. My lady, that's what Alaric thinks too. That's what he said. I'm too soft, too sentimental, too concerned with love and charity to fight for actual power. She could see her reflection in the window glass, ghostly and pale. A stranger wearing her face. Maybe he's right. He's not. Martha moved closer, her voice urgent. You're stronger than they know, my lady. You've just never had reason to show it. Eveline touched her belly, feeling the baby shift. Her child. The heir to a duchy that had already decided to discard its mother. Well, she said softly, I have reason now. Bolsem. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, Eveline sat by the window until dawn, watching the shadows shift across the gardens while her mind worked through possibilities. Scenarios. Options. The first instinct, the one she'd been raised to have, was to confront Alaric directly. Throw open his chamber door and demand an explanation, demand his loyalty, demand he choose between her and Celine. But she already knew what he'd choose. Men like Alaric didn't respect demands, they respected power. And right now, Eveline had none. No, that wasn't quite true. She had one source of power, and it was currently doing somersaults against her ribcage. The baby. The heir. The continuation of the Thornfield bloodline. Alaric needed this child. Whatever he felt or didn't feel for Eveline, he needed the legitimacy that came with a legal heir born of a legal marriage. Celine Virel could wear stolen crowns all she wanted, but she couldn't give him that. Not yet. Not while Eveline was still alive. The thought sent a chill through her. Women die in childbirth every day, Celine had said. Even duchesses. How convenient would it be if Eveline simply didn't survive the birth? No witnesses, no scandal, just a tragic loss that would leave the Duke free to remarry after a respectable mourning period. He'd have his heir, his freedom, and his new Duchess, all without the messiness of divorce or annulment. Eveline's hands tightened on the armrests. She'd been naive, sheltered, too trusting by half. But she wasn't stupid, and she wasn't going to make it easy for them. When dawn finally broke over the gardens, painting the white roses in shades of pink and gold, Eveline stood. Her body ached from sitting still all night, and the baby had finally settled into an uncomfortable position against her ribs, but her mind felt clearer than it had in months. She crossed to her writing desk and pulled out fresh parchment. Then, after a moment's consideration, she locked the door. What she needed was information, evidence, proof of what Alaric and Celine were planning, documented in a way that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. And she needed allies, people who owed her loyalty rather than the Duke. The question was, who? Eveline dipped her pen in ink and began to write. Lord Benedict Halloway, her older brother, a minor lord in the eastern provinces. They'd never been particularly close, but blood was blood. And Benedict had always been protective of her, even when they were children. Lady Cordelia Ashton, one of the few courtiers who'd continued visiting Eveline throughout her pregnancy. Either she was genuinely loyal, or she was a spy for Celine. Eveline would need to determine which. Master Raymond, the castle's senior steward, a man who'd served the duchy for 40 years and took his duties seriously. He'd never much liked Alaric, if the subtle disapproval in his eyes was any indication. And finally, perhaps most importantly, Dr. Helena Morse, the court physician. Eveline underlined that last name twice. If there was to be any unfortunate accident during childbirth, it would require Dr. Morse's cooperation or her absence. Either way, the physician was a key piece. The letters took her most of the morning to compose, each one carefully worded, revealing just enough to gauge loyalty without exposing her hand entirely. By the time she finished, the sun was high, and Martha had knocked 3 times to bring breakfast trays that Eveline ignored. She sealed each letter with plain wax, not her official seal, which might be noticed, and rang for Martha. "I need these delivered," Eveline said when the older woman entered. "Personally, not through the regular channels." Martha took the letters, her face troubled. "My lady, if the Duke finds out—" "He won't, not yet." Eveline met her eyes. "Martha, I need to know if I can trust you, really trust you." The older woman straightened. "I've served you since you arrived, my lady. Before that I served your mother when she visited court. The Harrows have always had my loyalty. And if I asked you to choose between that loyalty and your position here?" Martha didn't hesitate. "I'd choose you." Something in Eveline's chest loosened slightly. One ally. It was a start. "Then deliver these letters, wait for responses, and tell no one, especially not the Duke, what I'm doing." "Yes, my lady." Martha tucked the letters into her apron. "And if I may say, it's about time." After Martha left, Eveline allowed herself to eat. The breakfast had gone cold, but she forced down bread and cheese anyway. She'd need her strength. The baby kicked, and she placed a hand over it. "We're going to be fine," she whispered. "Both of us. I promise." It was a promise she had no idea how to keep, but it was a start. The response from Lord Benedict arrived 2 days later, delivered in a plain envelope by one of Martha's trusted contacts. Eveline opened it in the privacy of her chambers, hands trembling slightly. "Sister, I received your letter with great concern. If even half of what you suspect is true, you are in considerable danger. I am departing for the capital immediately and should arrive within the week. In the meantime, trust no one at court except those whose loyalty you can verify absolutely. I should have visited sooner. Forgive me for my absence when you needed family most. Your brother, Benedict Eveline, read it 3 times, then held it to the lamp flame and watched it burn. No evidence, no paper trail. Lady Cordelia's response came next, and it was interesting. Dearest Eveline, how wonderful to hear from you. I've been so worried about your health during this confinement. You must allow me to visit tomorrow for tea. I have so much to tell you about the latest court gossip. Some of it, I think, will interest you greatly. Your devoted friend, Cordelia. The phrasing was careful, deliberately so. Court gossip could mean anything, but the emphasis on interest you greatly suggested Cordelia knew something. Whether she was friend or foe remained to be seen. Dr. Morse's reply was more direct. Your Grace, I would be honored to attend you for a private consultation at your earliest convenience. There are several matters regarding your health and the upcoming birth that require discussion away from curious ears. Dr. Helena Morse. Master Raymond didn't write back at all. Instead, he appeared at her chambers that evening, announced only by Martha's quiet knock. Your Grace, he said, bowing with the formal precision of a man who'd spent his life in service. I understand you wish to speak with me. Eveline had been reading by lamplight, trying to distract herself from the waiting. She set the book aside and gestured to the chair opposite. Thank you for coming, Master Raymond. Please, sit. He did, though he looked uncomfortable with the informality. How may I serve you, my lady? Straight to business, then. Eveline appreciated that. I need information, she said quietly, and I need to know if I can trust you with it. Raymond's weathered face remained impassive. I have served this duchy for 41 years. I served the late Duke, your husband's father, and his father before him. My loyalty is to the duchy itself, not to any individual who happens to hold the title. It was a careful answer, diplomatic, but also revealing. And if the individual holding the title acts against the duchy's interests, then, Raymond said slowly, I would consider it my duty to support those who would correct the course. Eveline felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Master Raymond, what do you know about Céline Virel? His expression darkened. More than I wish to, Your Grace. Over the next hour, the steward laid out everything he knew. It wasn't pretty. Céline Virel had appeared at court 8 months ago, ostensibly to represent her father's interests in a trade dispute with the crown. But the dispute had been minor, hardly worth sending the baron's daughter personally. She'd stayed on, citing various excuses, and had quickly ingratiated herself with Alaric. At first, I thought it was merely a flirtation, Raymond admitted. The Duke has always had an eye for beauty, and Miss Virel is striking. But it became clear within weeks that this was something more calculated. How so? She made a point of learning everything about the duchy's operations. Trade routes, tax revenues, political alliances, the kind of information a future duchess would need, he paused, or a potential rival. And Alaric encouraged this? The Duke gave her unprecedented access to duchy records and council meetings. When I questioned it, he said she was proving herself capable of understanding state business. Raymond's jaw tightened. I believe, Your Grace, that he's been grooming her to replace you. Since before I was even pregnant. Yes. The single word held a world of apology. Eveline stood, pacing to the window. The gardens were dark now, but she could imagine the white roses out there blooming despite everything. Master Raymond, if I were to take steps to protect my position, would I have your support? What kind of steps? She turned to face him. The legal kind. The kind that would require documentation of financial irregularities, questionable council decisions, or evidence of improper conduct. Understanding dawned in the steward's eyes. Your Grace, are you asking me to help you build a case against the Duke? I'm asking you to help me protect this duchy from making a catastrophic mistake. She placed a hand on her belly. This child is the legitimate heir. Whatever happens to me, that doesn't change. And if Alaric thinks he can simply set me aside and install Céline in my place, he needs to understand the consequences. Raymond stood slowly, his expression grave. What you're proposing is dangerous. If the Duke discovers, he's already decided I'm too weak to fight back. That makes me predictable. Safe. Eveline met his eyes. Let's prove him wrong. For a long moment, the steward said nothing. Then he bowed, deeper than protocol required. I will do everything in my power to assist you, Your Grace. The duchy deserves better than this. After Raymond left, Eveline allowed herself a small smile. 2 allies now. It was progress. The baby kicked, and she placed both hands over it. Your father made a mistake, she whispered. He thought love made me weak, but he's about to learn that love can make you dangerous too. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming. Eveline intended to be ready. Lady Cordelia Ashton arrived the next afternoon in a flurry of emerald silk and calculated charm. She swept into Eveline's chambers like she owned them, her maid trailing behind with the tea service that looked expensive enough to fund a small war. Darling, Cordelia cooed, kissing the air beside Eveline's cheeks, you look absolutely radiant. Pregnancy suits you. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Eveline looked exhausted, pale, and approximately 9 months past caring about appearances. But Cordelia's smile never wavered as she settled into the chair by the window, arranging her skirts with practiced precision. Thank you for coming, Eveline said, watching her carefully. I wasn't sure you would. Nonsense, we're friends, aren't we? Cordelia's eyes held a challenge. Though I must admit, your letter was intriguing. Matters of mutual interest, you said. How deliciously vague. Martha poured tea with steady hands, then withdrew to the corner of the room, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to maintain the illusion of privacy. Eveline had learned to appreciate the older woman's tactical positioning. I need to know where your loyalties lie, Eveline said bluntly. No point in dancing around it. Cordelia's eyebrows rose. My, pregnancy has made you direct. She sipped her tea, considering. I suppose the real question is, where do yours lie, Eveline? With your husband or with yourself? Those aren't mutually exclusive, aren't they? Cordelia set down her cup with a delicate click. Let me be equally direct, since we're dispensing with niceties. The entire court knows about Celine Varel. They know she's wearing your jewelry to private dinners. They know the Duke hasn't visited your chambers in weeks. And they know that I'm disposable once the baby is born. Eveline's voice was steady. Yes, I've worked that out, thank you. Cordelia leaned back, studying her with new interest. You're not going to cry? Beg me to tell you it's not true? Collapse into hysterics? Would that help? Not even slightly. Then what would be the point? Eveline placed both hands on her belly, feeling the familiar weight. I need allies, Cordelia. People who understand that what's happening here is bad for everyone, not just me. Bad for everyone, Cordelia repeated thoughtfully. Explain. Eveline had prepared for this. She'd spent the previous night rehearsing arguments, testing different angles. Cordelia was smart, ambitious, and utterly self-interested. Appealing to her better nature would be useless, but appealing to her survival instinct? That might work. Alaric is making a mistake, Eveline said. A political one. If he sets me aside, the daughter of a respected noble house, a legal wife who's done nothing wrong, to install his mistress as Duchess, he sets a precedent. What's to stop him from replacing Celine in a few years when someone younger and more interesting catches his eye? Nothing, Cordelia said promptly. But that's Celine's problem, not mine, isn't it? What about when your husband decides your marriage is inconvenient, or when someone else's husband does? If the Duke can simply discard his legal wife with impunity, what protection does any woman at this court have? Cordelia's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or fear. You're suggesting this is about more than your personal situation. I'm suggesting that allowing this to happen makes every marriage in the duchy unstable, including yours. Eveline leaned forward. Your husband is a powerful man, Cordelia, wealthy, well-connected. If the Duke proves that wives are replaceable accessories rather than legal partners, how long before Lord Ashton starts looking at younger options? The silence stretched between them. Outside, birds sang in the gardens, oblivious to the power games being played inside. You've been thinking about this, Cordelia said finally. I've had time. And you believe you can fight him? The Duke of Thornfield, one of the most powerful men in the realm. I believe I can make it costly enough that he'll reconsider. Eveline met her eyes. But not alone. Cordelia stood, walking to the window. Her reflection looked thoughtful in the glass. What do you need from me? Information. Access to the court gossip network you've spent years cultivating. And when the time comes, public support. Public support could end my marriage. So could staying silent. Eveline pushed herself to her feet, moving to stand beside Cordelia. You have a choice, but it's not between safety and danger. It's between choosing which side you want to be on when the dust settles. Cordelia turned to look at her, really look at her, for the first time since arriving. Whatever she saw made her lips curve into a small, genuine smile. You know, I always thought you were too soft for court, too naive, too much like one of those white roses you planted everywhere. She paused. I'm pleased to discover I was wrong. So you'll help? I'll consider it, but I need something first. Cordelia's eyes hardened. Proof that you're serious, that this isn't just pregnancy emotions making you brave temporarily. What kind of proof? The Duke is hosting a small dinner tomorrow night, intimate gathering, 20 guests including Celine Varel. Cordelia smiled. Show up. Eveline's stomach dropped. I haven't been to a state dinner in months. Alaric will have to acknowledge you publicly or risk making this whole situation obvious to everyone. Cordelia's smile widened. You're still his legal wife, still the Duchess. You have every right to attend, but it takes courage to walk into a room where everyone knows you're being replaced and hold your head high anyway. That's not proof. That's suicide. That's the point. If you can face them all, face her, and not break, then you're serious. Then you're someone worth allying with. Cordelia gathered her skirts. But if you hide in these chambers and hope the problem resolves itself, then you're exactly as weak as they think you are. She moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Eveline, I hope you come. The court has been insufferably dull lately. A good scandal would liven things up considerably. After she left, Martha emerged from the corner. My lady, you can't seriously be considering... I am. Evelyn's hands were shaking, but her voice remained steady. She's right. If I'm going to fight for my position, I can't do it from hiding. But the stress, the baby will be fine. I'll be fine. Evelyn hoped that was true. Send word to Master Raymond. I need to know who's on the guest list for tomorrow's dinner, and I need a dress. My lady. Address, Martha. Something that reminds them exactly who I am. Martha's face worked through several emotions before settling on resignation. The blue silk with the silver embroidery? The one you wore at the spring festival? No, something better. Evelyn moved to her wardrobe, pulling open doors until she found what she was looking for. The dress had been a gift from Alaric during their first year of marriage. Deep burgundy velvet with gold threading, cut to emphasize elegance and power rather than delicacy. She'd never worn it, had always thought it too bold for her usual style. Perfect. This one. Martha took one look and paled. That's very striking, my lady. Good. I want them to notice. What Evelyn didn't say was that she was terrified. The thought of walking into that dining room, of facing Alaric and Celine and 24 courtiers who all knew the truth, made her want to vomit. But fear was useless. Fear changed nothing. Action did. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. Master Raymond sent word that the guest list included all of Alaric's closest political allies, several neutral parties who could be swayed either way, and, interestingly, Lord Benedict Harrow, who'd apparently arrived that morning and been issued a last-minute invitation. Her brother. At least she'd have one friendly face in the room. Dr. Morse appeared at sunset, responding to Evelyn's earlier summons. The physician was a severe woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a ruthless bun and eyes that missed nothing. Your Grace, she said, bowing slightly, you wish to consult with me? About the birth, Evelyn gestured to the chairs, and about certain precautions I'd like to take. Dr. Morse sat, her medical bag settling beside her with a clink of instruments. I'm listening. If something were to go wrong during the delivery, Eveline said carefully, whose decision would it be regarding treatment? Mine or the Duke's? The physician's expression didn't change. Legally, as your husband, the Duke has authority over medical decisions if you're incapacitated. And if I'm not incapacitated? If I'm conscious and capable of expressing preferences? Then your wishes should be respected, though in practice, Dr. Morse trailed off delicately. In practice, the Duke's preferences would override mine. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Evelyn leaned forward. Dr. Morse, I need to know if I can trust you. If something happens during childbirth, something unusual or unexpected, will you act in my best interest or the Duke's? The physician was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful. I took an oath to preserve life and health. That oath applies to all my patients equally, regardless of rank or title. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you. Dr. Morse met her eyes. But I will say this. I've delivered 17 babies in this castle over the past 20 years. All 17 mothers survived. I don't intend to break that record now. It wasn't a promise of loyalty, but it was something. There's another matter, Evelyn said. I want witnesses at the birth, people I trust, not just whoever the Duke assigns. That's highly unusual. I don't care. My brother, Lord Benedict, Martha, and you, of course. Those three, minimum, non-negotiable. Dr. Morse frowned. The Duke will object. Let him. I'm the one giving birth. I'm the one at risk. I get to choose who's in the room. Evelyn's voice hardened. Unless you're telling me I don't have that right? You have every right. The physician stood, gathering her bag. I'll make the arrangements. Though I should warn you, asserting yourself this way will make waves. Good. I'm tired of being quiet. After Dr. Morse left, Evelyn allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to sit in silence, hands pressed against her belly, breathing carefully. The baby shifted inside her, restless. It had been active all day, sensing her tension. I know, she whispered. I'm scared too, but we don't have a choice anymore. A knock at the door. Martha entered, followed by a young maid Evelyn didn't recognize. My lady, this is Anne. She's new to the castle, arrived last week from the eastern provinces. Martha's tone was significant. She's very good with hair, and she's exceptionally loyal to the Harrow family. Eveline understood immediately. Benedict had sent her, another ally planted right in the heart of the household. Anne, Eveline said warmly, welcome. I'll need your help preparing for tomorrow's dinner. The girl curtsied, her eyes bright with intelligence. Of course, Your Grace. I understand it's an important event. Very important, Eveline smiled. Make me look like a duchess. You are a duchess, my lady. Then make me look like one who refuses to be forgotten. The evening passed in quiet preparation. Anne proved to be talented with both hair and makeup, transforming Eveline's pregnancy-tired features into something that looked alert, powerful, even intimidating. The burgundy dress fit perfectly despite her swollen belly. If anything, the pregnancy added weight to her presence rather than diminishing it. When Eveline finally looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Perfect, Martha breathed. My lady, you look dangerous. Anne finished, smiling. Forgive me, Your Grace, but you look dangerous. Eveline stared at her reflection. The woman in the mirror stood tall despite the advanced pregnancy, dressed in colors that commanded attention, with eyes that held no softness at all. Good, she said. That's exactly what I'm going for. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Eveline lay awake, listening to the castle settle around her, trying not to think about all the ways tomorrow could go wrong. She'd demanded a place at the dinner table, but she had no plan beyond showing up. No strategy except defiance. Maybe that would be enough, or maybe she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. The baby kicked again, hard enough to make her wince. I hope you appreciate this someday, Eveline murmured. Everything I'm doing is for you. Thunder rumbled outside, closer than before. The storm that had been threatening for days was finally arriving. Eveline closed her eyes and tried to rest. Tomorrow would require all her strength. The next evening arrived far too quickly. Eveline spent the afternoon in her chambers, conserving energy while Anne worked on her hair, and Martha fretted about everything from the dress fit to the possibility of early labor. You shouldn't be stressing yourself like this, Martha said for the 10th time. Dr. Morse said the baby is healthy and I'm strong enough to attend to dinner. Eveline kept her voice calm. Stop worrying. Someone has to worry. You're being reckless. I'm being visible. There's a difference. At 6:30, a footman arrived with a message. The Duke requested Eveline's presence in his study before dinner. Martha's face went white. You don't have to go. You can say you're feeling unwell. No. Eveline stood, smoothing down her dress. If Alaric wants to talk, we'll talk. The walk to the Duke's study felt longer than it should have. Eveline's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her spine straight and her pace measured. Several servants stopped to stare as she passed. She hadn't been seen outside her chambers in weeks, and the burgundy dress was impossible to miss. Good. Let them stare. Let them talk. She knocked once on the study door and entered without waiting for permission. Alaric stood by the window, drink in hand, looking every inch the powerful Duke. He turned when she entered, and something flickered across his face. Surprise? Annoyance? Eveline, you look well. Thank you. She didn't sit, didn't make herself comfortable. This wasn't a social call. You wanted to see me? I heard you plan to attend dinner tonight. I do. That's not advisable. You're so close to your time and the evening will be long. I'm attending. Eveline met his eyes. I'm still the Duchess. I still have the right to join state dinners in my own home. Alaric's jaw tightened. I'm concerned about your health. How thoughtful. I'm sure your concern has nothing to do with the fact that Celine Virel is on the guest list. The name hung between them like a blade. You need to understand something, Alaric said quietly, setting down his glass. The duchy comes first, always. My personal feelings, your personal feelings, they're secondary to what's best for our people. And you've decided that what's best for our people is replacing me with your mistress? Don't be crude. Don't insult my intelligence. Eveline stepped closer. You've been planning this for months, making arrangements, building support, all while I carried your child and pretended not to notice that my own husband couldn't stand to look at me. That's not... He stopped, seeming to reconsider. Eveline, you're emotional. Pregnancy has made you... Clear-headed, actually. Pregnancy has given me time to think, to observe, to realize that everything I thought we had was a performance. She placed a hand on her belly. But this child is real. This child is legitimate. And no matter how much you might wish otherwise, that makes me relevant. Alaric's expression hardened. You're making this more difficult than it needs to be. Good. It should be difficult. Discarding your wife shouldn't be easy. I never said I was discarding you. You let her wear my crown. The words came out sharp, cutting. I saw you, Alaric, in the blue receiving room. I watched her try it on while you stood there and told her it suited her. His face went carefully blank. You were eavesdropping. I was walking in my own home. You were plotting my replacement. Let's not debate who behaved worse. For a moment, she thought he might deny it, might try to gaslight her into doubting what she'd seen with her own eyes. Instead, he surprised her. You're right, he said flatly, about all of it. Celine is more than a friend. And yes, I've been considering options for after the child is born. He moved closer, his voice dropping. But not because I'm cruel, Eveline. Because I need a partner who understands power, who wants it, fights for it. You've spent 3 years being pleasant and decorative, and that's admirable, but it's not enough. This duchy needs strength. And you think she can provide that? I think she won't spend her days planting gardens and hosting tea parties while the real work of governance happens elsewhere. The words stung more than Eveline expected, because part of her recognized the truth in them. She had been passive, content to play the role of perfect Duchess without questioning whether perfection was the same as effectiveness. But that didn't make his betrayal acceptable. Then you've made your choice, Eveline said quietly, and now I'm making mine. I'm attending dinner tonight. I'm going to sit at that table and remind everyone, including you, that I'm still here, still your legal wife, still carrying the heir to this duchy. And if you try to stop me, if you try to hide me away or pretend I don't exist, I'll make sure every noble family in the realm knows exactly what kind of man you are. Alaric's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? It's a promise. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Alaric laughed, a cold, humorless sound. You know, I actually underestimated you. I thought you'd cry, beg, maybe threaten to go home to your family. He shook his head. This is almost impressive. I'm so glad you approve. I don't, but I respect it. He moved back to the window, dismissing her. Attend the dinner if you must. But understand this, Eveline. You're delaying the inevitable, not changing it. We'll see. Eveline turned and walked out before he could respond, before her knees could give out, before the fear clawing at her chest could show on her face. She'd done it, confronted him, refused to back down. And she'd learned something important. Alaric wasn't untouchable. He was worried. Worried enough to try talking her out of attending, worried enough to reveal more than he'd intended. That meant she had leverage. The question was, would it be enough? Martha was waiting in the hallway, practically vibrating with anxiety. My lady, are you? I'm fine. Get me to the dining room. And Martha? Eveline squeezed her hand. Stay close tonight. I might need you. The walk to the dining room was torture. Every step felt like moving through water, her body heavy with pregnancy and fear. But Eveline kept her chin up, her pace steady, her expression serene. The doors to the dining room stood open, lamplight and conversation spilling out. She could hear voices inside. Alaric's political allies, neutral courtiers, and somewhere in that crowd, Celine Varel. Eveline paused at the threshold, taking one deep breath. Then she walked in. The conversation didn't stop immediately. It took a few seconds for people to notice her, to register the Duchess standing in the doorway in her burgundy dress, pregnant and powerful and absolutely refusing to be invisible. When the silence finally fell, it was complete. Eveline scanned the room. 22 faces staring back at her with varying expressions, shock, discomfort, curiosity, and in one case, poorly concealed fury. Celine Varel stood near the far window, wearing emerald green and a smile that had frozen on her face. Good evening, Eveline said pleasantly. I hope I'm not late. Alaric appeared at her elbow, his hand gripping her arm just tight enough to be a warning. Darling, he said through clenched teeth, what a surprise. Is it? I thought you received my acceptance this morning. Eveline smiled at the assembled guests. Lord Benedict, how wonderful to see you. Her brother stepped forward, bowing formally. His eyes held a mixture of pride and concern. "Sister, you look radiant." "Pregnancy agrees with me, apparently." She let Alaric guide her toward the table, noting with grim satisfaction that there was no place set for her. He genuinely believed she wouldn't come. "We'll need another chair," Alaric said to a servant, his voice tight. "Of course, Your Grace." While the servant scrambled to accommodate her, Eveline took the opportunity to survey the room more carefully. She recognized most of the guests, old allies, new enemies, and several whose loyalties remained unclear. Lady Cordelia Ashton stood near the fireplace, watching the scene unfold with undisguised interest. Their eyes met. Cordelia raised her glass slightly in what might have been a salute. Point made, apparently. The chair arrived. Alaric seated her with exaggerated courtesy, then took his own seat at the head of the table. Celine remained standing by the window, her face carefully composed but her hands clenched in her skirts. "Well," said Lord Pemberton, an elderly duke who'd known Eveline's father. "This is certainly more exciting than I expected." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Dinner began with painful awkwardness. Conversation limped along, punctuated by long silences and desperate attempts at small talk. Eveline ate sparingly, aware that every eye was on her, every gesture analyzed. Celine finally took her seat, conspicuously far from Eveline, close to Alaric. The message was clear. Halfway through the second course, Lady Ashton's husband, Lord Reginald, a pompous man who enjoyed the sound of his own voice, cleared his throat. "Your Grace," he said, addressing Alaric, "I've been meaning to ask about the spring trade negotiations. I understand there have been some irregular developments." Alaric's expression didn't change. "Nothing that can't be managed." Of course. Though I did hear rumors about certain unauthorized access to duchy financial records. Concerning, if true." The table went very quiet. Eveline glanced at Master Raymond, who stood against the wall in his steward's position. His face was professionally blank, but she caught the slightest nod. So, Raymond had started planting seeds, questioning Celine's access to sensitive information, making people wonder about impropriety. "I'm not sure what you've heard," Alaric said coldly, "but I assure you all duchy business is conducted with appropriate oversight." Naturally, Lord Reginald smiled. "Though one does wonder about the optics. A young woman with no official position being granted such comprehensive access to state matters. People talk, Your Grace." "People always talk," Celine interjected smoothly, "usually about things they don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly, Miss Viral." Lord Reginald's smile sharpened. "The question is, does everyone else?" The bar blanded. Several guests shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in their food. Eveline remained silent, letting others fight this battle. But she caught Benedict's eye across the table. He gave her the smallest smile. Her brother understood what was happening. The court was beginning to fracture, sides being chosen, alliances tested, and Eveline had just forced everyone to acknowledge that she was still a player in this game. "I think," Cordelia said into the awkward silence, "that we should discuss something more pleasant. The upcoming festival, perhaps?" "Your Grace," she addressed Eveline directly, "I understand you've traditionally organized the spring celebrations. Will you be resuming those duties after the birth?" It was a test, a public one. "Of course," Eveline said calmly. "I'm looking forward to it. The spring festival has always been one of my favorite duties as Duchess." "As Duchess," Cordelia repeated, emphasizing the title. "How lovely. I'm sure we're all eager to see your return to public life." "Not all of us," someone muttered. Eveline didn't see who said it, but she saw Celine's satisfied smirk. The rest of the dinner crawled by. Every course felt like a battle, every conversation a minefield. But Eveline endured. She smiled. She engaged in small talk. She refused to look tired or weak or defeated. By the time dessert arrived, her back was screaming and the baby was doing acrobatics against her ribs. But she sat straight, fork in hand, playing the role of unshakable Duchess. Finally, Alaric stood, signaling the end of the meal. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. I believe we have brandy in the drawing room for those who wish to continue." "Actually," Eveline said, pushing back her chair with Martha's help, "I think I'll retire. It's been a lovely evening, but I should rest." She stood, and every person in the room stood with her, protocol for the Duchess. Even Celine, though she looked like it physically pained her. Eveline smiled at the assembled guests. "Good night, everyone. Lord Benedict, would you escort me?" Her brother was at her side immediately, offering his arm. Together, they walked from the dining room under the weight of 22 stairs. The moment they were out of earshot, Benedict exhaled sharply. "That," he said, "was the most terrifying dinner I've ever attended, and I once dined with the king during a succession crisis." "Was it that bad?" "Eveline, you walked into a room full of people who expected you to collapse, stayed for 3 hours while pregnant enough to be in labor, and made them all acknowledge your authority. It was magnificent, also completely insane." She laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. "I'm not sure what I accomplished besides proving I'm stubborn. You accomplished plenty. Half that room is questioning Alaric's judgment now. The other half is terrified of you." He paused. "I include myself in the second category." They reached her chambers. Benedict hesitated at the door. "Eveline, I need to ask, are you safe here? Because if not, I can have a carriage ready within the hour. We could be at our father's estate by morning." "And what? Hide? Let them win by default?" She shook her head. "No, I'm staying, I'm fighting, but I need your help." "Anything." "The birth. When it happens, I need you in the room, as witness." Benedict's eyes widened. "You think they'll try something?" "I think I'm not taking chances." Eveline gripped his hand. "Promise me. No matter what Alaric says, you stay." "I promise." After he left, Eveline finally allowed herself to collapse. Martha and Anne helped her out of the dress, into a nightgown, into bed. Every muscle ached. The baby was restless, agitated by the evening's stress. "You did well, my lady," Martha said softly, brushing hair from Eveline's face. "I'm proud of you. I'm exhausted. You're also winning. Slowly, maybe, but winning." Martha squeezed her hand. "Rest now. Tomorrow you can plan your next move." But sleep wouldn't come. Eveline lay in the darkness, reliving every moment of the dinner, analyzing responses, measuring reactions, trying to calculate her next step. She'd proven she wouldn't disappear quietly. But proving and winning weren't the same thing. Somewhere in the castle, Alaric and Celine were probably planning their own countermove, and Eveline was running out of time. The baby would come soon, within days or weeks, and then she'd be vulnerable in ways she couldn't defend against, unless she acted first. The thought formed slowly, terrifyingly, but once it took shape, Eveline couldn't shake it. She needed to force the confrontation now, before the birth, before she was too weak to fight back. She needed evidence, public evidence, that couldn't be dismissed or explained away, and she knew exactly where to find it. Eveline sat up, ignoring her body's protests. She crossed to her writing desk and pulled out fresh parchment. "Master Raymond, I need access to the Duchy's financial records. Specifically, any accounts or expenditures related to Celine Virel's stay at court, and I need them before the end of the week." It was dangerous. If Alaric discovered what she was doing, he could claim she was acting against the Duchy's interests, could have her confined to her chambers under medical pretense. But danger was better than passivity. Eveline sealed the letter and rang for Anne. "Deliver this to Master Raymond, tonight. Don't let anyone see you." Anne took the letter without question, disappearing into the darkened hallways. Eveline returned to bed, but her mind was already racing ahead to the next move, and the one after that. She'd walked into that dining room tonight and refused to be erased. Now she needed to make sure they couldn't erase her later either. The baby kicked once, sharply, as if in agreement. "We're going to win this," Eveline whispered into the darkness, "or we're going to make them regret every single choice that brought us here." Outside, the storm finally broke. Rain lashed against the windows. Thunder shook the castle walls. And somewhere in the depths of the building, Eveline's letter made its way through secret passages to Master Raymond's hands, setting in motion a chain of events that would shake the duchy to its foundations. There was no turning back now. Master Raymond appeared in Eveline's chambers before dawn, the financial ledgers tucked under his arm like contraband. His face was drawn, older somehow in the gray, pre-morning light filtering through the windows. "Your Grace," he said quietly, setting the heavy books on her desk. "What you asked for. Though I should warn you, what's in here is worse than you thought." Eveline had barely slept. She'd spent the night alternating between pacing and lying down, the baby pressing against her lungs until breathing felt like work. Now she moved to the desk, her hands trembling slightly as she opened the first ledger. "Show me." Raymond flipped pages with practiced efficiency, stopping at entries marked with small notations in the margins. "Here and here. These are payments authorized by the Duke over the past 7 months, all classified as diplomatic expenses." Eveline scanned the numbers. They were staggering, thousands of gold marks paid out in increments that looked almost casual. Jewelry, clothing, a townhouse in the capital's most expensive district, private carriages, servants. "He's been setting her up as Duchess since before I was even pregnant," Eveline said slowly. "Yes, but that's not the worst part." Raymond turned to another section, his finger tracing a line of expenditures. "Look at the timing of these payments. They correspond exactly with duchy tax collections from the northern estates. Money that should have gone to infrastructure repairs, grain reserves, winter preparations. It's all been diverted." Eveline felt her stomach drop. "He's been embezzling from the duchy treasury to fund his mistress?" "Not embezzling technically. He has authority over duchy finances, but he's been diverting funds designated for specific purposes to personal expenditures. If the northern estates knew their tax money was buying Celine Viral's jewelry instead of fixing their roads," Raymond trailed off significantly, "there would be riots, at minimum, possibly worse." The steward straightened, his expression grim. "Your Grace, this is the leverage you need. If you make this public, if you show the noble families that the Duke has been misusing duchy funds for his mistress, they'll turn on him. Not because they care about you, but because they care about their money and their power." Eveline stared at the ledgers, her mind racing. This was exactly what she'd hoped to find. Proof that couldn't be denied or explained away. Evidence that would force even Alaric's strongest allies to question his judgment. But using it meant declaring open war. "If I do this," she said slowly, "there's no going back. Alaric won't forgive it. He won't just set me aside, he'll destroy me." "He's planning to destroy you anyway," Raymond said bluntly. "At least this way you have a fighting chance." The baby kicked hard, as if agreeing. Eveline placed a hand over it, thinking, "I need copies. Multiple copies, delivered to different people. If something happens to me, if I go into labor early or there's an accident, this information needs to survive. I can arrange that. Who should receive them?"
"Lord Benedict, Lady Cordelia, and—" Eveline paused, thinking strategically. "Lord Pemberton, he's old guard, hates scandal, but he's also fiercely protective of duchy resources. If he sees this, he won't be able to ignore it." "That's dangerous." "Lord Pemberton reports directly to the Duke on financial matters."
"Which is exactly why he needs to see this. If he thinks Alaric is compromising duchy stability for personal reasons, he'll have to act. His reputation depends on it." Eveline met Raymond's eyes. "Can you do it without being caught?" "I can try. But, Your Grace, you need to understand, once these ledgers are copied and distributed, events will move very quickly. You need to be prepared for retaliation. I'm as prepared as I can be." Eveline closed the ledger. "Make the copies. Deliver them within 2 days, and Raymond, thank you for taking this risk." The steward bowed deeply. "The duchy deserves better than this, Your Grace. I'm simply doing my duty." After he left, Eveline allowed herself 5 minutes of pure terror. Her hands shook as she poured water from the pitcher, spilling half of it. The enormity of what she'd just set in motion crashed over her like a wave. She was accusing the Duke of financial impropriety. Publicly, or as good as. There would be an investigation, questions, demands for answers. And Alaric would know exactly who had triggered it. A knock at the door. Martha entered, took one look at Eveline's face, and immediately moved to her side. "My lady, what's happened?" "I've just committed treason," Eveline said with a slightly hysterical laugh. "Or saved the duchy. I'm not entirely sure which." "Tell me." Eveline explained about the ledgers, the evidence, the plan to distribute copies. Martha listened with growing alarm, her face paling. "You're certain about this?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Eveline moved to the window, looking out at the gardens where dawn was finally breaking. The white roses looked gray in the early light. "I'm tired of being careful, Martha. Careful hasn't protected me. It's just made me easy to dispose of. And reckless might get you killed. Maybe, but at least I'll go down fighting." The words sounded braver than Eveline felt. In truth, she was terrified. But fear had stopped being useful. Fear just made her freeze, made her passive, made her exactly the kind of woman Alaric could discard without consequence. "I need to see Dr. Morse," Eveline said suddenly. "Today? I need to know exactly how much time I have before the baby comes." Martha nodded, already moving toward the door. "I'll send for her immediately." Dr. Morse arrived within the hour, her medical bag in hand and her expression professionally neutral. She examined Eveline thoroughly, checking her belly, listening to the baby's heartbeat, asking questions about contractions and pain. "You're close," she said finally. "Days, not weeks. Could be as soon as tomorrow or as late as a week from now. But the baby's dropped. Your body is preparing." "How close can I cut it? If I needed to attend a public event, something stressful, I wouldn't recommend it." Dr. Morse's voice was firm. "Any additional stress could trigger early labor, and given your current state, that could be dangerous for both you and the child." Define dangerous. The physician studied her carefully. "Your Grace, what are you planning? Something that needs to happen before I'm too weak to see it through." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." Eveline met her eyes. "Dr. Morse, I need you to be honest. If I go into labor under stressful circumstances, if there are complications, will you prioritize my life or the baby's?" The silence stretched between them. Finally, Dr. Morse sighed. "That's not a choice I should have to make. In most cases, saving the mother saves the baby. But if it comes down to it..." She paused. "I took an oath to preserve life. All life. I won't sacrifice either of you if there's any other option. And if there isn't, then I'll do what I think is right, which may not be what the Duke thinks is right." Dr. Morse packed her instruments with sharp, precise movements. "I won't be complicit in murder, Your Grace, not even disguised as medical necessity." It wasn't a promise of loyalty, but it was close enough. "Thank you," Eveline said quietly. After the physician left, Eveline forced herself to eat breakfast, to rest, to conserve her strength. The baby was restless all morning, moving constantly. She tried not to read anything into it. At noon, Benedict arrived with news. "The court is buzzing," he said without preamble, pacing her chambers like a caged animal. "Everyone's talking about last night's dinner. Half the nobles think you've lost your mind, challenging Alaric so publicly. The other half think you're brilliant. And which half do you belong to?" "Both." He stopped pacing to look at her. "Eveline, what's your endgame here? You can't just keep showing up and making scenes. Eventually, Alaric will find a way to contain you." "I know. That's why I'm not just making scenes." She told him about the ledgers, the evidence, the plan to distribute copies. Benedict's face went through several emotions: shock, fear, admiration, more fear. That's actually brilliant. And suicidal. Mostly suicidal. He ran a hand through his hair. "When does Raymond make the delivery?" "Tomorrow night. I wanted to wait until the copies were made and secured." "And then what? You just wait for the explosion?" "No. Then I force the issue." Eveline's voice steadied. "There's a council meeting scheduled for 3 days from now. All the major noble families will be there. I'm going to attend, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what Alaric has been doing." "You're going to accuse him publicly? In front of the entire council?" Benedict looked horrified. "Eveline, that's not brave. That's suicide. He'll have you arrested, declared incompetent, locked in a tower somewhere while he raises your child and marries his mistress. He can try, but if I have Lord Pemberton's support, if the financial evidence is already distributed, he'll have to answer questions, publicly, before he can silence me. And if the stress triggers labor, if you go into childbirth in the middle of a council meeting, then at least I'll have witnesses." Eveline placed both hands on her belly. "Benedict, I know this is dangerous, but staying quiet is more dangerous. Waiting is more dangerous. If I give birth before dealing with this, I'm at my most vulnerable. They could claim complications, could say I died in childbirth, could take my baby and erase me from history. They wouldn't dare. They already dare. Alaric let his mistress try on my crown while I was pregnant with his heir. What makes you think he has any limits?" Eveline's voice broke slightly. "I have to act now, while I can still act, while I'm still relevant enough to matter." Benedict crossed to her, taking her hands in his. His grip was warm, solid, real. "All right," he said quietly. "If you're doing this, I'm with you, whatever happens. But Eveline, promise me you have a backup plan, a way out if everything goes wrong." I promise. The lie came easily. There was no way out. There was only forward. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Eveline spent it in her chambers, ostensibly resting but actually reviewing every piece of information Raymond had provided. She memorized numbers, dates, transaction details. If she was going to make accusations, they needed to be precise. Martha brought updates throughout the day. The copies had been made successfully. Raymond was preparing to deliver them that night. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Too smoothly. Eveline didn't trust it. At sunset, Anne appeared with a message. My lady, the Duke requests your presence for a private dinner. Just the two of you. He says it's important. Eveline's blood ran cold. Alaric never requested private dinners, especially not now, not after the disaster of the state dinner. When? Within the hour, my lady. A trap. It had to be. But refusing would signal that she knew something, would put him on guard. Tell the Duke I'll be there. Martha grabbed her arm the moment Anne left. You can't go. It's too dangerous. I have to. If I refuse, he'll know I'm up to something. Eveline pulled away, moving to her wardrobe. Help me dress. Something simple. Not the burgundy. I don't want to antagonize him unnecessarily. My lady, please. Martha. Eveline turned, meeting her eyes. I need you to do something for me. If I'm not back in my chambers by midnight, go to Benedict. Tell him to accelerate the plan. Get those ledgers to Lord Pemberton immediately, not tomorrow. You think the Duke will hurt you? I think he'll try to neutralize me, one way or another. Eveline's hand went to her belly protectively. The baby's insurance against anything too obvious. But he could confine me, drug me, claim medical necessity. Martha's face crumpled. I should go with you. No, I need you free to act if something goes wrong. Eveline squeezed her hand. Trust me. I've gotten this far. I can handle one dinner. The walk to Alaric's private dining room felt like walking to an execution. Eveline kept her pace steady, her breathing controlled, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. The baby was active again, sensing her distress. Stay calm, she told herself. He needs you alive. At least until after the birth. Alaric waited in a small, intimate dining room she'd never seen before. It was tucked away in the east wing, beautifully appointed but clearly designed for privacy. No servants. No witnesses. Eveline. He stood when she entered, pulling out her chair with exaggerated courtesy. Thank you for coming. You didn't give me much choice. She sat carefully, arranging her skirts. What's this about, Alaric? Can't a husband want to dine with his wife? Not when that husband has been avoiding said wife for months. Eveline met his eyes. Let's skip the pretense. Why am I here? Alaric settled into his own chair, pouring wine for himself, but water for her. The gesture felt calculated. Look, I'm being considerate of your condition. I wanted to talk, he said. Really talk. Without an audience, without the pressure of court politics. All right, talk. He studied her for a long moment. You've changed. The woman who showed up at dinner 2 nights ago, she's not the woman I married. You're right, that woman was naive. She thought love was enough. She thought being good and kind and dutiful would matter. Eveline took a sip of water. This woman knows better. I never wanted to hurt you. And yet, Eveline, he leaned forward, his expression almost earnest. You have to understand, the duchy needs strength, decisiveness. I need a partner who understands power, who isn't afraid to use it. You've spent 3 years being perfect and pleasant, but that's not the same as being effective. So you decided to replace me. I decided to consider my options. Options that include a woman young enough to be my sister with no political experience beyond seducing other women's husbands? Eveline's voice hardened. Forgive me if I don't see how that makes the duchy stronger. Alaric's jaw tightened. Celine understands ambition. She wants power, actively pursues it. That makes her predictable, useful. And I'm not useful anymore? You're useful as the mother of my heir, but after that, he trailed off deliberately. There it was. The truth laid bare. So what happens after the birth? Eveline kept her voice steady. You set me aside? Annul the marriage? Have me declared incompetent? That depends on you. Alaric stood, moving to the window. I'm not a cruel man, Eveline. I don't want to destroy you, but I need you to understand reality. Your role is changing. You can accept that gracefully, or you can make this difficult for everyone. Define accept gracefully. Step back from public duties. Focus on raising the child. Allow Celine to take on the official responsibilities of Duchess. He turned to face her. In exchange, you keep your title, your quarters, your allowance. You'll still be the Duke's wife, just privately. Eveline felt laughter bubbling up, slightly hysterical. You want me to become your invisible first wife while your mistress plays Duchess? That's your idea of a graceful solution? It's better than the alternative. Which is? I find you unfit to serve as Duchess due to mental instability brought on by pregnancy and childbirth. You're quietly retired to a country estate for your health. The baby stays here, raised by suitable attendants. His voice went cold. It's been done before, Eveline. It can be done again. The threat was clear, crystal clear. You'd take my child? I'd ensure my heir is raised properly, by people who understand their duty. Eveline's hands clenched in her lap, nails digging into her palms. The baby kicked hard, violent, as if it too could sense the danger. I need time to think about this, she managed. Take the time you need, but understand, after the baby is born, decisions will be made, with or without your cooperation. Alaric returned to the table. Now, shall we eat? Cook prepared your favorite. The rest of the dinner passed in a haze. Eveline forced food down a throat that didn't want to swallow, made conversation that sounded normal while her mind screamed. Alaric was planning to take her baby, to declare her unfit, to erase her completely while she was still weak from childbirth. She'd known he was planning something, but hearing it stated so baldly, so matter-of-factly, made it real in a way that chilled her blood. By the time she escaped back to her chambers, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely turn the door handle. Martha was waiting, face white. My lady, thank the saints. I thought, send for Benedict, now, and Raymond. We're accelerating everything. What happened? He threatened to take the baby, to have me declared unfit. Eveline paced, adrenaline overriding exhaustion. We don't have days, we have hours. Within 20 minutes, both men were in her chambers, listening as Eveline recounted the dinner conversation. That bastard, Benedict said when she finished. That absolute language won't help us, Raymond interrupted. Action will. Your Grace, if we're accelerating the timeline, we need to move now, tonight. Agreed. The council meeting is in 2 days, but we can't wait that long. Not if Alaric is planning to move against me immediately after the birth. Eveline turned to Raymond. The ledger copies, are they ready? Yes, I can have them delivered within the hour. Do it. Lord Pemberton gets his tonight, and I want you to add something. Eveline grabbed parchment, writing quickly. A note explaining that I'll be making a formal presentation to the council in 2 days. That gives him time to review the evidence and prepare questions. You're still planning to attend the council meeting? Benedict looked horrified. Eveline, you could go into labor at any moment. Then I go into labor at the council meeting, in front of 50 witnesses. She met his eyes. Better that than alone in my chambers where accidents can happen. The room fell silent. She's right, Raymond said finally. If something happens to her Grace during childbirth, with the entire council as witnesses, there can be no cover-up, no convenient explanations. You're using your own labor as insurance? Benedict's voice cracked. That's insane. That's survival. Eveline sealed the note to Lord Pemberton. Raymond, deliver this in the ledgers. Benedict, I need you to gather whatever allies you can. Anyone who might be swayed by evidence of financial misconduct. We need a coalition. What about Lady Cordelia? Benedict asked. I'll handle her myself. Eveline moved to her writing desk again. She wanted proof I was serious. Well, she's about to get it. The next 2 hours were a blur of activity. Messages were dispatched. Allies were contacted. Plans were made and revised and made again. By the time midnight struck, Eveline had assembled the framework of something that looked almost like a strategy. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even good. But it was better than nothing. As Benedict and Raymond finally left, promising to return early the next morning, Eveline allowed herself to collapse into bed. The baby had finally settled, exhausted from her stress. We're almost there, she whispered, hand on her belly. Just hold on a little longer, please. Sleep claimed her in fits and starts, filled with dreams of council rooms and ledgers and crowns that didn't fit. She woke at dawn to cramping. Not contractions, not yet, but a warning. Her body preparing for what was coming. Not today, Eveline told her belly firmly. We have work to do first. But her body, it seemed, had other plans. By noon, the cramps had intensified. By mid-afternoon, they were coming in regular intervals. Not close enough to be true labor yet, but close enough to be alarming. Dr. Morse arrived within minutes of being summoned, examined her with brisk efficiency. Early labor, she confirmed. Could still be a day or two before active delivery begins. But you need to rest, Your Grace. No stress, no exertion. The council meeting is tomorrow. Then you'll miss it. No. Eveline sat up despite the physician's protests. I'll be there, even if I have to be carried. Your Grace, you could endanger both yourself and the child. I'm already in danger. So is the child. The only way to protect us both is to finish this. Eveline met her eyes. Can you keep me comfortable enough to attend? Not stop the labor, just manage it? Dr. Morse's expression was deeply conflicted. It's possible. Certain herbs can slow early labor, reduce pain, but Your Grace, then prepare them. I'll take full responsibility for whatever happens. The Duke won't allow this. The Duke doesn't get to vote. Eveline's voice went hard. I'm the one giving birth. I'm the one at risk. And I'm the one who decides where and when that happens. The physician stared at her for a long moment. Then she sighed, defeated. I'll prepare what you need, but I'm putting my objections in writing, for the record. Fair enough. After Dr. Morse left, Eveline allowed herself exactly 10 minutes of fear. Then she pushed it down, locked it away, and got to work. There were final preparations to make, messages to send, allies to confirm, and most importantly, there was tomorrow to survive. The council meeting was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Eveline planned to arrive early, to be seated before anyone could object to her presence. Benedict would be there. Raymond, Lord Pemberton, who'd received the ledgers and, according to Raymond's latest report, had been up all night reviewing them with increasing horror. Everything was in place. All Eveline had to do was make it through one more night. The cramps intensified as evening fell. Martha helped her into a comfortable nightgown, prepared a mild sedative from Dr. Morse's herbs. It helped, but not much. The baby was pressing down now, heavy and insistent. Soon, Eveline told it. Just not yet, please. Not yet. Midnight came and went. The contractions slowed slightly, the herbs working, or just a temporary reprieve. Eveline lay in the darkness, listening to the castle settle around her. Tomorrow, everything would change, one way or another. She must have dozed, because the next thing she knew, Martha was shaking her awake. Dawn light filled the room. My lady, you need to see this. Eveline sat up, wincing at the stiffness in her back. What's wrong? The council meeting. The Duke has moved it up. It's scheduled for this morning. In 3 hours. Eveline's blood went cold. He knows. He knows we're planning something. It appears so. Martha's face was grim. Master Raymond sent word. The Duke called an emergency session to address urgent duchy business. All major families have been summoned. Then we move up our timeline too. Eveline pushed herself out of bed, ignoring the cramping in her abdomen. Help me dress, and send for Benedict immediately. My lady, you're in labor. Early labor, which gives me a few hours. Eveline moved to her wardrobe. The burgundy dress again. If I'm making an entrance, I might as well make it memorable. 2 hours later, dressed and prepared and running on pure adrenaline, Eveline stood outside the council chambers. Inside, she could hear voices, Alaric addressing the assembly, his tone grave and authoritative. Benedict stood beside her, looking pale but determined. Are you certain about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Eveline took a deep breath, felt another contraction building. Not yet, just a little longer. Ready? As I'll ever be. Benedict pushed open the massive doors to the council chamber. 50 faces turned toward them. The room went silent. Alaric stood at the head of the table, mid-sentence, his expression freezing as he saw her. Good morning, Eveline said, walking into the room with her head high despite the pain radiating through her belly. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. The silence was absolute. Then Lord Pemberton stood, his weathered face set in hard lines. "Not at all, Your Grace," he said deliberately, emphasizing her title. "In fact, your timing is perfect. We were just about to discuss certain financial irregularities that have come to light. Perhaps you'd care to join us." Eveline met Alaric's eyes across the room, saw the fury there, the calculation. She smiled. "I'd be delighted." Another contraction hit, stronger than before. Eveline's vision blurred momentarily, but she kept walking, kept her spine straight, kept moving forward. She'd made it this far. Now came the hardest part. She took her seat at the council table, directly across from Alaric, and felt her water break. The warmth spread down Eveline's legs, soaking through the burgundy dress and pooling on the marble floor beneath her chair. For one suspended moment, no one moved. 50 pairs of eyes locked on the growing wet stain, the unmistakable evidence that the Duchess of Thornfield was about to give birth in the middle of a council meeting. Eveline gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Pain radiated through her abdomen, sharper than before. Active labor, real labor. The baby was coming, and it wasn't waiting for politics. "Your Grace," Lord Pemberton half rose from his seat, alarm breaking through his usual composure. "I'm fine," Eveline said through gritted teeth. The lie was obvious to everyone. "Please, continue with the meeting." Alaric stood, his face a careful mask. "The Duchess is clearly unwell. This session should be postponed while—" "No." Eveline's voice cut through the room like a blade. Another contraction built, stealing her breath, but she forced the words out anyway. "I came here to address this council. I'm not leaving until I've done so." "You're in labor," Alaric said flatly. "You need a physician, not—" "Dr. Morse is already here." Eveline gestured to the back of the room where the physician had entered quietly, medical bag in hand. She'd been waiting in the hallway, just in case. "She can monitor my condition while we proceed." "This is madness," someone muttered. "This is necessary," Lord Pemberton corrected, his voice carrying weight. He looked directly at Alaric. "The Duchess has traveled here under considerable duress to address matters of duchy business. The least we can do is hear her out before insisting she retire." Alaric's jaw tightened. "Lord Pemberton, surely you can't think—" "I think," Pemberton interrupted, "that we should listen to what Her Grace has to say, particularly given the documents I received last night, documents that raise serious questions about duchy finances." The room exploded into murmurs, heads turned. Councillors leaned toward each other, whispering urgently. Alaric's eyes found Eveline's across the table. The fury there was incandescent. "You have no idea what you've done," he said quietly. "I know exactly what I've done." Another contraction hit. Eveline wrote it out, breathing through the pain while Dr. Morse moved to her side. "I've protected this duchy from embezzlement, from corruption, from a duke who values his mistress more than his people." The whispers grew louder. "Careful, Eveline," Alaric warned. "Accusations like that require proof." "I have proof." Eveline nodded to Benedict, who stood and began distributing copies of the ledgers Raymond had prepared. "Financial records showing that over the past 7 months, the Duke has diverted more than 80,000 gold marks from duchy infrastructure funds to personal expenditures, jewelry, property, carriages, all for the benefit of one Miss Celine Vierel." The room went deadly quietly. Alaric remained standing, his composure cracking at the edges. Those funds were allocated for diplomatic purposes. "Diplomatic purposes?" Lord Pemberton's voice was ice. "I've reviewed these ledgers, Your Grace. Unless diplomacy now requires purchasing townhouses and diamond necklaces for unmarried noblewomen, I fail to see the connection." "The context is more complex than—" "Then explain it." Pemberton leaned back in his chair. "Explain to this council why duchy tax revenue, money paid by farmers and merchants and craftsmen who believed it would improve roads and grain storage, was instead spent on your mistress." The word hung in the air like a condemnation. Alaric's face flushed. "My personal relationships are not subject to council approval. They are when they cost the duchy 80,000 marks. Pemberton's voice hardened. "Your Grace, I have served this duchy for 40 years. I have advised your father and your grandfather, and never, never have I seen such blatant misuse of public funds for private gain." A contraction seized Eveline, stronger than the others. She gasped, doubling over slightly. Dr. Morse's hands were immediately on her, checking, assessing. Your Grace, you need to lie down. Not yet. Eveline straightened with effort. I'm not done. You're being foolish, Alaric said, but there was desperation creeping into his voice now. You're risking your health and the baby's for what? To embarrass me? To save this duchy from your poor judgment. Eveline met his eyes. You thought I'd stay quiet. Thought I'd accept being replaced because I was too soft, too gentle, too dutiful to fight back. But you were wrong. You're going to get yourself killed over this, he said quietly. Is that what you want? To die in childbirth in front of 50 witnesses, just to prove a point? If that's what it takes for the truth to come out, then yes. Eveline's voice was steady, despite the pain. At least then there will be no doubt about what happened. No convenient stories about tragic accidents. The implication was clear. Several counselors exchanged troubled looks. Lord Ashton, Cordelia's husband, stood slowly. Your Grace, addressing the Duke, are we to understand that the Duchess has reason to fear for her safety during childbirth? That's absurd, Alaric snapped. Is it? Lady Cordelia rose as well, her voice carrying clearly. Because I distinctly recall Miss Betrayal remarking at a recent gathering that women die in childbirth every day, even duchesses. It seemed an odd observation at the time. More whispers. More troubled looks. Alaric was losing control of the room. Eveline could see it in the way counselors shifted away from him, in the skeptical expressions replacing the usual deference. Where is Miss Betrayal? Someone asked. If we're discussing her role in this matter, shouldn't she be present? Miss Betrayal has no role, Alaric said tersely. She is a guest at court, nothing more. A guest who costs 80,000 marks? Lord Pemberton's eyebrow rose. That's a rather expensive visitor, Your Grace. The expenditures were justified. Then justify them, now, before this council. Pemberton gestured to the ledgers spread across the table. Explain each purchase, each payment. Make us understand how this served duchy interests rather than personal ones. Alaric's mouth opened, closed. For the first time since Eveline had known him, he looked genuinely cornered. Then the doors burst open. Celine Viral swept in, dressed in deep green silk, her face flushed with anger. She'd clearly been listening at the door, had finally decided to intervene. This is ridiculous, she announced. You're all acting like the Duke committed some crime. He allocated funds as he saw fit. That's his prerogative. Miss Betrayal, Lord Pemberton said coldly. You were not invited to this council session. Neither was she, Celine shot back, pointing at Eveline. Yet, here we are, watching a pregnant woman make a spectacle of herself because she can't accept that her husband prefers someone else. The room froze. Eveline felt another contraction building, but she pushed through it. Is that what you think this is about? Jealousy? Isn't it? Celine moved closer to Alaric, a deliberate claiming gesture. You had 3 years to be the Duchess this duchy needed. You failed. All you did was plant gardens and host tea parties while real decisions were made elsewhere. Real decisions, Eveline repeated. Like embezzling duchy funds? Allocating funds, Celine corrected. For purposes that advanced duchy interests? Alaric needed someone who understood politics, who could negotiate with neighboring houses, who could warm his bed while his wife was pregnant. Lady Cordelia's voice was sharp. Please, Miss Betrayal, let's not pretend this was about politics. Selina's eyes flashed. At least I'm honest about wanting power, unlike her Grace, who pretends to be some innocent victim while she's been plotting behind everyone's backs. Plotting? Eveline laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. I brought evidence of financial misconduct to the council. That's not plotting. That's my duty as Duchess. You're not the Duchess anymore, Celine said quietly. You're just the woman having his baby. Once that's done, you're nothing. The words landed like stones. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably. Benedict stood, his face dark with fury. How dare you speak to the Duchess of Thornfield that way? It's fine, Benedict. Eveline's voice was calm, almost eerily so. Let her talk. Let everyone hear exactly what kind of woman the Duke has chosen to replace me with. Another contraction. This one nearly buckled her knees. Dr. Morse caught her arm, supporting her weight. Your Grace, you must lie down now. The baby is coming fast. In a moment. Eveline straightened, breathing hard. First, I want to hear the Duke answer a question. Alaric's expression was unreadable. What question? Do you love her? Eveline gestured at Celine. Is this about love or is it about control? Because if it's love, I can accept that. It would hurt, but I could accept it. But if it's just about finding someone more convenient, more compliant than the wife who inconveniently developed a conscience, love is irrelevant, Alaric cut in. This is about what's best for the duchy. And you've decided that what's best is a woman with no political experience, no noble connections beyond her minor baron father, and a reputation for seducing married men? Lord Pemberton's voice dripped contempt. Forgive me, your grace, but that seems questionable judgment at best. Lord Pemberton, I'm not finished. The old lord stood, his full authority behind him now. I have served this duchy loyally for 4 decades. I have watched you grow from boy to man to duke, and I have kept silent about many things I disagreed with, because that is the nature of service. But this? He gestured at the ledgers, at Celine, at the mess of the situation. This I cannot ignore. You have compromised duchy integrity for personal gratification. You have diverted public funds for private use. And you have attempted to replace a legal, honorable duchess with a woman whose only qualification is your infatuation. It's not infatuation, Alaric started. Then what is it? Pemberton's voice rose. Love? Ambition? Or just the desire for a woman who won't question your decisions? Alaric's face was stone. I don't have to explain myself to you. Actually, your grace, you do. This council has oversight responsibility for duchy finances. And when those finances are mismanaged, we have a duty to intervene. Pemberton looked around the table. I move that we launch a formal investigation into these expenditures. All in favor? Hands rose around the table. 1, 3, 7, 10. More than half the council. Alaric stared at the show of hands, his face draining of color. This is treason, he said quietly. This is accountability, Pemberton corrected. Something you've avoided for too long. Eveline felt warmth flood between her legs again. More fluid. The baby was coming, ready or not. Her vision swam. Dr. Morse, I know, your grace, we need to move you now. The physician turned to Benedict. Help me get her to a bedchamber, quickly. Use my rooms, Lord Pemberton said immediately. They're closest and private. You can't just leave, Alaric protested. This session isn't over. Yes, it is. Eveline let Benedict and Dr. Morse support her weight as they moved toward the door. The council has what it needs. The investigation will proceed. And your grace? She paused, looking back at him. You're going to learn that throwing away a wife isn't as easy as you thought. They made it to Pemberton's chambers just as another contraction hit, this one so intense that Eveline cried out. Dr. Morse laid her on the bed, already issuing orders to servants who'd followed them. Hot water, clean linens, and I need Lady Martha immediately. Benedict hovered near the door, his face pale. Is she going to be all right? That depends on the next few hours. Dr. Morse was checking Eveline's progress, her expression grave. The baby's positioned well, but she's exhausted. This needs to happen quickly or we'll have complications. How long? Eveline gasped. Hours? Maybe less. You're progressing fast. The physician wiped sweat from Eveline's forehead. Your Grace, what you did in there. It was incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. I know. Eveline tried to laugh, but another contraction cut it short. Did it work? You turned the council against him. So yes, I'd say it worked. Dr. Morse's voice softened. But now you need to focus on surviving this. Can you do that? Do I have a choice? There's always a choice. Right now you're choosing to live. To fight for yourself and this baby, so fight. The hours that followed blurred together in waves of pain and brief respites. Martha arrived, took up position on one side while Dr. Morse commanded the other. Benedict stayed in the outer room, pacing, occasionally calling through the door for updates. Somewhere in the haze, Eveline heard voices arguing outside. Alaric demanding entry. Lord Pemberton calmly refusing him. Your presence is not required here, your grace. The Duchess has chosen her own attendants. That's my child, and that's my goddaughter, Pemberton said flatly. If you'd like to claim paternal rights, perhaps you should have acted like a father instead of a politician. Now remove yourself before I have you removed. The voices faded. Time lost meaning. There was only pain and breathing and Dr. Morse's steady instructions. Push, rest, push again. The baby was coming whether Eveline was ready or not. I can see the head, Dr. Morse announced. One more push, Your Grace, just one more. Eveline gathered what remained of her strength and pushed. The world exploded into pain and pressure and finally, release. A baby's cry filled the room. It's a girl, Dr. Morse said, her voice full of wonder. A healthy baby girl. Eveline collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted beyond measure. But she was alive. The baby was alive. They'd both survived. Dr. Morse placed the baby on Eveline's chest, still covered in birth matter, but perfect. So impossibly perfect. Hello, Eveline whispered, tears streaming down her face. Hello, little one, we made it. The baby's eyes opened, dark and unfocused, but searching. Her tiny hand curled around Eveline's finger with surprising strength. What will you name her? Martha asked softly. Eveline hadn't thought that far ahead, hadn't dared plan beyond surviving the birth. But looking at her daughter now, the answer came easily. Verity. Her name is Verity. Truth. After so many lies, so much deception, her daughter would be named for truth. It's perfect, Martha said, crying now too. The door opened. Lord Pemberton stood there, his weathered face gentle. May I see her? Eveline nodded. The old lord approached the bed, looking down at the baby with undisguised affection. She's beautiful, strong. Look at that grip. He touched the baby's hand carefully. You did well, Eveline, both in there and out here. What's happening with the council? The investigation is proceeding. Alaric tried to dissolve the session, but he doesn't have the votes. More than 2/3 of the council support the inquiry now. Pemberton smiled grimly. Your little performance made quite an impression. Several lords who were on the fence have committed to our side. Our side? The side that believes duchesses shouldn't be discarded for convenience. The side that thinks financial accountability matters. The side that... He paused. The side that believes in you. Eveline felt fresh tears threatening. I can't believe it worked. Neither can he. Alaric is in his study, reportedly drinking heavily and refusing visitors, including Miss Viral. Pemberton's smile widened. It seems the young lady is learning that being a duke's favorite is less appealing when the duke is under investigation. A knock at the door. Benedict entered, his face lighting up when he saw the baby. Oh, Eveline, she's perfect. Her name is Verity. Truth. Benedict understood immediately. He moved to the bedside, peering down at his niece. Hello, Verity. I'm your Uncle Benedict. I promise to teach you absolutely everything your mother doesn't want you to know. Despite everything, Eveline laughed. The sound felt foreign, like something she'd forgotten how to do. The council wants to see you, Benedict said. When you're ready. They want to officially acknowledge the birth of the heir. Already? I know, but they're being strategic. If they formally acknowledge Verity as the legitimate heir now, before Alaric can mount any kind of counterattack, it strengthens your position considerably. Benedict's expression turned serious. They're on your side, Eveline. Really, truly on your side. But we need to move quickly. Eveline looked down at her daughter, still cradled against her chest. Verity had fallen asleep, her tiny face peaceful. How long do I have before they expect me? A few hours. Time to clean up, rest, make yourself presentable. Dr. Morse interjected. Though I must state for the record that what you're contemplating is medically inadvisable. Noted. Eveline met her eyes. But I'm doing it anyway. 3 hours later, washed and dressed in a clean gown with Verity wrapped in fine blankets, Eveline returned to the council chamber. She was exhausted, every muscle screaming, but she was also victorious. She'd survived, her daughter had survived, and the council was waiting. Lord Pemberton had arranged everything, a special chair cushioned and comfortable, servants standing by in case she needed assistance, and most importantly, every single council member present and waiting, including Alaric. He sat at his usual place at the head of the table, his face carefully neutral, but Eveline could see the defeat in his eyes, the knowledge that he'd lost. My lords, Pemberton announced as Eveline entered, the Duchess of Thornfield and the heir, Lady Verity Thornfield. Everyone stood. Every single person in that room rose to their feet as Eveline walked in carrying her daughter. The gesture was unmistakable. They were acknowledging her, not just as the Duke's wife, but as the rightful Duchess, as the mother of the heir, as someone who mattered. Eveline took her seat, settling Verity carefully in her lap. "Thank you all for being here," she said quietly. "I know this has been an unusual day." "An understatement, Your Grace," someone said, and nervous laughter rippled through the room. "I came before this council this morning to present evidence of financial misconduct," Eveline continued. "I understand an investigation is underway. I also understand that my methods were unorthodox." "Unorthodox but effective," Lord Pemberton said. "Your Grace, the council has reviewed the evidence you provided. We have also conducted preliminary interviews with Duchy financial staff. The findings are troubling." He gestured to another lord who stood with a ledger. "The expenditures in question total 83,000 gold marks over 7 months. All were authorized by the Duke for what he classified as diplomatic expenses. However, none of these expenditures went toward recognized diplomatic activities. Instead, they funded personal purchases for Miss Celine Virel." Murmurs around the table. "Furthermore," the Lord continued, "we've discovered that some of these funds were taken from accounts specifically designated for Northern Estate improvements. Roads that were supposed to be repaired went unrepaired. Grain reserves that should have been stocked remain empty, all because the allocated money went elsewhere." "This is a serious matter," Pemberton said, looking directly at Alaric. "Your Grace, you have the right to respond to these findings. What do you have to say?" Alaric stood slowly. He looked older somehow, diminished. "The expenditures were made in good faith," he said. "I believe they served Duchy interests by strengthening political connections with the Virel family." "The Virel family holds no significant political power," someone interrupted. "They're minor nobility at best." "Nevertheless, I believe the alliance had value." Alaric's voice was flat. "If I was wrong, that's an error in judgment, not a crime." "An error in judgment that cost the Duchy 83,000 marks," Pemberton said, "and compromised essential infrastructure. Your Grace, the Council cannot overlook this." "What are you suggesting? That I be removed from power over a budgetary dispute?" "No one is suggesting removal." Pemberton's voice was careful. "But we are suggesting oversight, enhanced council review of major expenditures, greater transparency in financial decisions, and," he paused significantly, "a formal acknowledgement that the Duchess of Thornfield remains the Duke's legal wife, with all rights and privileges that entails." The room went very quiet. Alaric's eyes found Eveline's across the table. She met his gaze steadily, Verity sleeping peacefully in her arms. "You've won," he said quietly. "Is that what you wanted to hear?" "I wanted to hear that I wouldn't be erased," Eveline replied, "that my daughter wouldn't grow up without her mother, that being a good, dutiful wife didn't make me disposable." "And now?" "Now you live with the consequences of your choices, just like I have to live with mine." Alaric was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement, if not quite defeat. "Very well. Let the record show that Duchess Eveline Thornfield remains my legal wife, that Lady Verity Thornfield is my legitimate heir, and that the Council has my permission to implement whatever oversight measures they deem necessary." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even close to what Eveline deserved, but it was official, public, binding. She'd won. "Thank you, Your Grace," Pemberton said formally. "This council will reconvene in 1 week to discuss specific oversight implementations. Until then, we stand adjourned." As the council members filed out, many stopped by Eveline's chair to congratulate her on the birth, to admire Verity, to offer quiet words of support. Lady Cordelia was among them, her smile genuine. "You actually did it," she said softly. "I thought you were going to get yourself killed. Instead, you changed everything. I had help. You had courage. That's rarer." Cordelia touched Verity's tiny hand. "She's lucky to have you as a mother." After the room had cleared, only Benedict, Lord Pemberton, and Martha remained. Alaric had left without speaking to her again. "What happens now?" Eveline asked. "Now you recover," Dr. Morse said, appearing in the doorway. "And I insist, actually insist, Your Grace, that you rest for at least a week. No more dramatics, no more council appearances,
just healing.
Agreed. Eveline looked down at Verity, still sleeping peacefully despite everything.
I think we've had enough excitement for a while.
What about Miss Viral? Benedict asked.
What about her?
Eveline's voice was calm. She's no longer my problem. The council has made its position clear. If Alaric wants to continue his relationship with her, he's free to do so, but she'll never be Duchess. That position is mine. And if he tries again, if he looks for another way to replace you, then I'll fight again. Eveline met her brother's eyes. But I don't think he will. Not after today. Today taught him that I'm not as easy to erase as he thought. Lord Pemberton chuckled. That, my dear, is the understatement of the century. You walked into a council meeting in active labor, accused the Duke of embezzlement, and gave birth to the heir while simultaneously dismantling his political power. I've seen military campaigns less effective. Eveline felt herself smile. I had good teachers and better allies. You had yourself, Pemberton's voice was gentle. That's what none of them expected. Not Alaric, not Celine, not even me. We all thought you were too soft, too gentle, too much the perfect Duchess to fight dirty. I'm not fighting dirty. I'm fighting smart. There's a difference? I prefer to think so. Martha stepped forward, offering to take Verity so Eveline could rest. But Eveline shook her head. Not yet. I just want to hold her a little longer, to remember that this is why I fought. Not for revenge, not for power, just for the right to be her mother. The room fell quiet. Outside, evening was falling over the castle. The storm that had threatened for days had finally passed, leaving clear skies and stars. Eveline looked down at her daughter's peaceful face and allowed herself, for the first time in months, to feel hope. She'd survived. They'd both survived. And tomorrow, when the sun rose on a new day, Eveline would still be the Duchess of Thornfield. Not because her husband permitted it, but because she'd fought for it. Because she'd refused to disappear. Because she'd proven that sometimes the quietest women make the loudest statements when they finally choose to speak. Verity stirred in her arms, making small newborn sounds. Eveline touched her daughter's face gently, marveling at the softness. Welcome to the world, little one, she whispered. You were born into a battle, but you won't grow up in one. I promise you that. It was a promise she intended to keep, no matter what came next. The first week after Verity's birth passed in a haze of exhaustion and cautious optimism. Eveline stayed in Lord Pemberton's guest chambers, safer than returning to her own rooms in the West Wing, where Alaric could control who came and went. The old lord had insisted, and Eveline was too tired to argue. Dr. Morse visited twice daily, monitoring both mother and baby with hawk-like attention. Martha practically lived in the outer room, appearing whenever Verity fussed or Eveline needed anything. And Benedict stationed himself like a guard dog, turning away visitors Eveline didn't want to see, which was almost everyone. On the 8th day, Eveline finally felt strong enough to walk without wincing. She stood at the window, Verity sleeping in a cradle Martha had procured from somewhere, and watched the castle gardens below. The white roses were blooming again despite the early spring cold. They were survivors, those roses. Just like her. A knock at the door. Martha answered it, spoke briefly, then turned with an odd expression. My lady, Miss Viral is here. She's asking to speak with you. Eveline's first instinct was to refuse. She had no interest in confronting the woman who'd tried to steal her life, but curiosity won out. Let her in, but stay close. Celine entered looking diminished somehow. Her usual confidence was muted, replaced by something that might have been uncertainty. She wore a simple dress, no jewels, no elaborate styling. The costume of someone who'd realized she'd lost. Your Grace, she said, the title clearly uncomfortable in her mouth. Thank you for seeing me. I haven't decided if I'm seeing you or just observing you yet. Eveline remained by the window. What do you want? To apologize. The words were so unexpected that Eveline actually laughed. Really? For what specifically? Sleeping with my husband? Trying on my crown? Suggesting I might die in childbirth? You'll have to be more specific. Celine flinched. All of it. I made mistakes. Mistakes. Eveline tasted the word. That's a generous description of calculated seduction and attempted replacement. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Celine moved closer, her hands twisting together. When I came to court, I was just supposed to assess the political situation. My father wanted intelligence on duchy alliances, trade agreements. I was never supposed to... She stopped. Fall for the Duke?
Use him.
Celine's voice was bitter. I didn't fall for anything. I saw an opportunity. A powerful man with a wife he'd grown tired of. It seemed simple. How flattering for both of us. I know how it sounds, but you need to understand, I'm the fourth daughter of a minor baron. I have no inheritance, no prospects, no power of my own. Marriage to some country lord was the best I could hope for, unless I made my own opportunities. So you decided to make an opportunity out of destroying my marriage? Eveline kept her voice level. That's not an apology, Celine. That's an excuse. You're right. Celine's shoulders sagged. I told myself it was strategy, that you were weak, that you didn't deserve him, that I'd be better for the duchy. But the truth is I was just ambitious and ruthless, and I didn't care who I hurt. Eveline studied her carefully. The admission seemed genuine, but she'd learned not to trust appearances. Why are you really here? Because the Duke dismissed me yesterday. Had his steward deliver a letter saying my presence at court was no longer required. After everything I did, everything I risked, Celine's voice cracked. I thought he loved me, or at least valued me. But the moment things got difficult, the moment you fought back successfully, he just discarded me, like I was nothing. Welcome to the club. Eveline's voice was dry. Though at least you got 8 months. I got 3 years before he started looking for a replacement. It's not the same, isn't it? We were both convenient to him until we weren't. The only difference is I had a legal contract and you had a promise. Eveline moved to the cradle where Verity slept. The other difference is I fought back. You just accepted dismissal. Celine was quiet for a moment. What do you want from me? Groveling? Public humiliation? Because I'm already leaving court. My father is furious. My reputation is destroyed. I'll be lucky if any decent man will marry me now. I don't want anything from you, Celine. You're not my problem anymore. Eveline looked down at her daughter. But I will say this. If you're looking for sympathy because a man used you and threw you away when you stopped being useful, you won't find it here. Not from me. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I was looking for... Celine trailed off, seeming to search for words. Understanding, maybe. You're the only person who knows what it's like to be chosen and then unchosen by him. No. I know what it's like to be valued as a wife and mother until those roles became inconvenient. You know what it's like to be valued as a mistress until you became a liability. Those aren't the same thing. Celine's face hardened. You think you're so much better than me, the righteous Duchess who never did anything wrong. But we're not that different, Eveline. We both wanted his attention, his approval. We just went about it differently. I wanted a marriage. You wanted a position. There's a difference. Eveline's voice was cold now. And while we're being honest, I might have forgiven the affair, eventually. People are weak. Marriages fail. But you wore my crown. You stood in front of a mirror and put my crown on your head while my husband watched. That wasn't about him. That was about taking what was mine. The words hung between them. You saw us, Celine said quietly, in the blue receiving room. I saw everything I needed to see. And that's when you decided to fight back. That's when I decided I was worth fighting for. Eveline met her eyes. You wanted to know the difference between us? That's it. When I was faced with being erased, I refused. When you were faced with the same thing, you came here looking for validation from the woman you tried to replace. Celine stood there for a long moment, her face working through emotions. Finally, she nodded. You're right, about all of it. She moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I am sorry, not because I think it matters to you, but because I need to admit it to someone. After she left, Martha emerged from the corner where she'd been waiting. That took remarkable restraint, my lady. Did it? I thought I was rather harsh. You were honest. There's a difference. Martha moved to the cradle, adjusting Verity's blanket. Do you think she meant it? The apology? I think she meant she's sorry she lost. Whether she's actually sorry for what she did. Eveline shrugged. It doesn't matter. She's leaving. That's enough. A commotion in the hallway, raised voices, one of them Benedict's. Don't care what the Duke wants. You're not getting past me. The door burst open. Alaric stood there, Benedict blocking his path, both men looking ready to come to blows. "Let him in," Eveline said tiredly. "We might as well get this over with." Benedict stepped aside reluctantly. Alaric entered, and Eveline noticed he looked rough, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were rumpled. He'd clearly been drinking. "Eveline," his voice was hoarse. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About everything. About us. About—" He caught sight of the cradle, and something flickered across his face. "Is that her?" "Her name is Verity. And yes." Alaric moved closer, looking down at the sleeping baby. For a moment his expression softened into something almost human. "She's beautiful." "She is." Eveline positioned herself between him and the cradle. "But you didn't come here to admire your daughter. What do you want?" "I want to explain." "There's nothing to explain. You wanted a different wife. You took steps to acquire one. It didn't work out the way you planned." Eveline kept her voice flat. "We can coexist in this marriage without explanations." "That's not enough." "It's all I'm offering." Alaric ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "You've turned the entire council against me. Do you understand what you've done? Lord Pemberton is demanding oversight of every financial decision. 3 noble families have withdrawn their support. The Northern Estates are threatening rebellion if I don't personally tour and apologize for the delayed infrastructure repairs. You've crippled my ability to govern. I exposed corruption. There's a difference. You exposed poor judgment, maybe. But corruption, that's inflammatory. 83,000 gold marks diverted from public works to buy jewelry for your mistress. What would you call it?" "Political maneuvering that didn't pan out." Alaric's voice rose. "I was trying to build an alliance with the Viral family. The Virals have no power, no influence, no strategic value whatsoever. You were trying to impress a woman young enough to be your daughter because your wife had the audacity to get pregnant with your heir." Eveline's voice stayed calm. "Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was strategy." "Fine. You want honesty? I was tired of being married to someone who made me feel guilty for wanting more. More passion, more challenge, more power?" Eveline finished. "You wanted a wife who'd fight you, who'd push back, who'd make you work for dominance." She laughed bitterly. "I could have done that, Alaric, if you'd ever indicated that's what you wanted. But you married me for compliance. You told me you wanted a gentle wife, a kind duchess, someone who'd be a credit to the family. So that's what I gave you, and then you punished me for it. That's not fair. None of this is fair, but it's true." Alaric was quiet for a moment. "So what now? We just exist in the same castle? Share the same name, but nothing else? We raise our daughter. We fulfill our public duties. We maintain the appearance of a functional marriage." Eveline moved to the window. "And you never, ever try to replace me again." "And if I want an annulment? On what grounds? I've provided an heir. I've done nothing to violate our marriage contract. No court in the realm would grant you an annulment without cause." Eveline glanced back at him. "You're stuck with me, Alaric, the same way I'm stuck with you. This is insane. We can't live like this." "We can. People do it all the time. Marriages of convenience that stay convenient by maintaining distance." Eveline's voice was steady. "You can have your affairs discreetly. I'll have my duties publicly. As long as you never again try to erase me, never again let another woman wear my crown, we can coexist. And if I want more than coexistence, then you should have thought of that before you tried to replace me." Alaric stared at her for a long moment. "You've changed. You're not the woman I married." "No, I'm better." Eveline met his eyes. "I'm the woman who survived you trying to destroy her. That version is much harder to get rid of." He left without another word, the door closing with controlled precision behind him. Benedict appeared immediately. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually." Eveline felt a strange lightness in her chest. That was the last conversation I needed to have. Now it's finished. What's finished? The pretense that this marriage means anything beyond legal contract and mutual obligation. Eveline returned to the cradle, looking down at Verity. "I spent 3 years trying to make him love me, trying to be the perfect wife. Now I'm just going to be the Duchess. That's simpler. The next few weeks saw the duchy slowly stabilize. The council's investigation concluded with a formal censure of the Duke and new oversight protocols. Alaric was required to tour the northern estates, personally apologize for the delayed improvements, and commit duchy funds to completing the work immediately. Lord Pemberton was appointed to a permanent financial oversight committee. 3 other council members joined him, ensuring that no future expenditures could be authorized without multiple approvals. Celine Viral left court quietly, returning to her father's estate in disgrace. Rumor had it she was being married off to an elderly count who needed a young wife and didn't care about her reputation. Eveline didn't waste time thinking about her. Instead, she focused on recovery, on Verity, and on rebuilding her position at court. She began receiving visitors again, carefully selected allies who'd supported her during the crisis. Lady Cordelia came often, bringing court gossip and surprisingly good advice about navigating the new political landscape. "You're a hero to half the noble wives," Cordelia said during one visit, bouncing Verity gently. "You proved that husbands can't just discard us when we become inconvenient. That matters. I didn't do it to make a statement." "No, you did it to survive, but the statement happened anyway." Cordelia handed Verity back. "Several women have approached me asking for advice. Their husbands are having affairs, considering replacements. Your example gave them courage." "To do what?" "To fight back. To demand respect. To refuse to disappear quietly." Cordelia smiled. "You started something, Eveline, whether you meant to or not." 6 weeks after Verity's birth, Eveline was finally strong enough to resume public duties. Her first official appearance was at the Spring Festival, the event she'd traditionally organized. She'd worried about the reception, worried that people would see her as damaged, weakened by everything that had happened. But when she walked into the Great Hall, Verity in her arms and Martha at her side, the applause was immediate and overwhelming. Every noble family stood, every courtier, even the servants along the walls. They were applauding her, not the Duke. Her. Eveline felt tears prick her eyes but forced them back. She'd cried enough. Today was about strength. "Thank you," she said simply. "It's good to be here." The festival was a success. Music played. Food was served. People laughed and danced and celebrated spring's arrival. And through it all, Eveline moved among them with Verity, accepting congratulations, making small talk, being the Duchess they needed. Alaric was conspicuously absent. He'd left that morning for the Northern Estates tour, would be gone for weeks. The timing was deliberate, his way of avoiding the festival and the reminder of what he'd almost lost. As evening fell and guests began departing, Lord Pemberton found her in the gardens. The white roses were in full bloom now, their scent heavy on the warm air. "You did well today," he said, sitting on the bench beside her. "I survived. That's about all I can claim. That's more than enough." Pemberton looked out over the gardens. "You know, I've been thinking about something. The duchy needs a regent." "A regent? Alaric is perfectly capable." "Capable of governing, yes, but not trusted. Not anymore." Pemberton turned to face her. "The Northern Estates don't trust him. Half the council doesn't trust him. But they trust you." "What are you suggesting?" "That you accept a formal role, not just Duchess in title, but Duchess in practice. Co-regent, perhaps. With authority over certain duchy matters, charitable work, certainly, but also infrastructure planning, estate relations, maybe even some financial oversight." Eveline stared at him. "Alaric would never agree to that." "Alaric doesn't have a choice. The council can mandate it as part of the oversight protocols. And frankly, after what happened, he doesn't have the political capital to refuse." Pemberton's smile was sharp. "You've earned this, Eveline. You fought for your position. Now claim the power that comes with it." "I don't want power. I just wanted to be left alone to raise my daughter. And you should be able to do both. Power doesn't have to corrupt. In the right hands, it can protect. It can heal. It can make things better." He gestured at the gardens. "You've already proven you care about this duchy, about its people. Why not formalize that care into actual authority?" Eveline looked down at Verity, sleeping peacefully in her arms. Her daughter would grow up in this duchy, would inherit it someday, if tradition held. Didn't Eveline owe it to her to make sure the duchy was worth inheriting? "I'll consider it. That's all I ask." That night, back in her chambers, She'd finally returned to the West Wing, but had them redecorated entirely, erasing every trace of the rooms where she'd been isolated. Eveline sat with Benedict and Martha. Pemberton offered me a position, she told them. Co-regent. Formal authority over duchy matters. Benedict whistled. That's significant. Do you want it?
I don't know. Part of me just wants to focus on Verity, on rebuilding some kind of normal life. Eveline paused. But another part of me thinks about all those women Cordelia mentioned, the ones who saw me fight back and found their own courage. If I take this position, it sends a message that women can have power, real power, not just influence through their husbands. It also makes you a target, Martha said quietly. The Duke's allies won't accept a woman regent easily. They don't have to accept it. They just have to live with it. Eveline felt determination settling in her chest. I've spent my whole life being acceptable, being pleasant, being what other people needed me to be. Maybe it's time to be what I need me to be. And what's that? Benedict asked. Someone who doesn't apologize for taking up space. Someone who fights for what she's earned. Someone Verity can look up to when she's old enough to understand what happened here. Benedict grinned. Then I think you should accept. The formal announcement came a week later. The council voted, over Alaric's written objections from the Northern Estates, to appoint Duchess Eveline Thornfield as co-regent with specific authority over charitable works, infrastructure development, and estate relations. The reaction was mixed. Alaric's remaining allies were furious, calling it an overreach of council authority, but they were outnumbered by those who saw it as appropriate accountability. And among the common people, the response was overwhelmingly positive. The Duchess who'd fought for her position, who'd given birth in a council meeting rather than hide away, who'd exposed corruption and survived attempted replacement. She was becoming something like a folk hero. Eveline found it both flattering and exhausting, but she accepted the role seriously. She began attending council meetings regularly, participating in discussions, offering input on duchy policies. Some councillors resisted at first, but she won them over through competence and careful preparation. She did her research, knew her facts, and made solid arguments. Slowly, grudgingly, they began to respect her. 3 months after Verity's birth, Alaric returned from the Northern Estates tour. He looked older, worn down by weeks of apologizing and rebuilding burned bridges. He and Eveline saw each other at council meetings, at official events, but rarely spoke beyond necessary formalities. It was exactly what she'd predicted. A marriage in name only, coexistence without intimacy. One evening, 6 months after everything had changed, Eveline stood in the nursery watching Martha rock Verity to sleep. Her daughter was growing fast, already smiling, already reaching for things with chubby hands, already perfect. "Do you ever regret it?" Martha asked softly. "Fighting back? Making things so complicated?" Eveline considered the question. "Sometimes I regret how hard it was, how much it cost. But do I regret fighting? No, never. Even though your marriage is essentially over? It was over before I fought back. I just refused to let it destroy me too." Eveline touched Verity's tiny foot. "This little girl is going to grow up knowing her mother didn't accept being erased. That matters more than a perfect marriage. You're a good mother." "I'm trying to be." Eveline smiled. "That's all any of us can do." A year after Verity's birth, the duchy celebrated her first birthday with elaborate festivities. The Great Hall was decorated with white roses, Eveline's signature reclaimed and celebrated. Noble families came from across the realm to attend, to pay respects to the heir and her mother. Eveline wore burgundy again, the same dress she'd worn to that fateful dinner, now altered to fit her post-pregnancy body. It felt right, wearing it, a reminder of where she'd been and how far she'd come. Alaric was there playing the role of proud father with practiced ease. They stood together to receive guests, a united front for appearance's sake. But there was distance between them, careful and maintained. After the formal ceremonies ended and the celebration began, Lord Pemberton found Eveline watching dancers from the edge of the floor. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about timing. A year ago, I was pregnant and terrified and convinced my life was ending. Now I'm co-regent, my daughter's healthy, and I actually look forward to council meetings." She laughed. "Life is strange. Life is what we make of it." Pemberton gestured at the crowd. "You've made something remarkable, Eveline, not just for yourself, but for this duchy.
Infrastructure improvements are ahead of schedule. Relations with the northern estates are stronger than they've been in decades, and women throughout the realm are finding courage they didn't know they had. I just did what I had to do. No, you did what needed to be done. There's a difference. He paused. Your daughter is going to grow up in a better world because you fought for it. Eveline felt her throat tighten. I hope so. I know so. Pemberton bowed formally. If you'll excuse me, I should mingle. Duty calls. After he left, Benedict appeared with 2 glasses of wine. Thought you could use this. Desperately. Eveline took the glass gratefully. How are you holding up? Better than you, probably. At least I can leave when this gets boring. He smiled. You have to stay and be gracious. The burden of power. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Verity, now awake and being passed between admiring courtiers like a particularly adorable trophy. Do you think about what might have happened? Benedict asked quietly. If you hadn't fought back? Sometimes. Late at night when I can't sleep. Eveline sipped her wine. I think about the version of me who accepted defeat, who let them erase her, who died in childbirth or disappeared to a country estate while Celine raised Verity as her own. That version doesn't exist. No, but she almost did. That's what scares me. I came so close to just accepting it, to believing I deserved it. But you didn't. But I didn't. Eveline looked at her brother. Do you know what the difference was between accepting and fighting? What? Seeing Celine wear my crown. That moment crystallized everything, made it real, made it something I couldn't rationalize away or pretend wasn't happening. She paused. Sometimes you need to see the worst-case scenario to understand what you're willing to fight for. And what were you willing to fight for? My daughter's right to know her mother. My own right to exist. The principle that being kind doesn't mean being weak. Eveline smiled. Turns out that's enough. As midnight approached and the celebration showed no signs of slowing, Eveline finally excused herself to put Verity to bed. Martha had her in the nursery, already changed into night clothes. One more lullaby? Martha asked. Always. Eveline took her daughter, settling into the rocking chair by the window. She sang softly, an old song her own mother had sung. Verity's eyes drooped, fighting sleep, but losing the battle. Halfway through the second verse, Eveline heard the door open. Alaric stood there, watching them. May I? He asked quietly. Eveline hesitated, then nodded. He crossed the room, sitting in the chair opposite hers. For a long moment, he just watched Verity sleep. She looks like you, he said finally. She looks like herself. That too. He paused. I wanted to say something. I don't expect it to change anything, but I need to say it anyway. All right. I was wrong. About everything. About what I wanted, what the duchy needed, what you were capable of. I underestimated you completely. Alaric's voice was rough. And I lost the best thing I ever had because of it. Eveline looked at him carefully. Is this an apology? It's an acknowledgement. I don't know if I'm capable of the kind of apology you deserve. At least you're honest about that. I'm trying to be honest about a lot of things now. Too late, probably, but still. He stood. She's lucky to have you as a mother, and the duchy is lucky to have you as regent. I wish I'd been smart enough to see that when it mattered. After he left, Eveline sat in the darkened nursery, Verity sleeping peacefully in her arms. The admission didn't change anything, didn't fix the marriage, didn't undo the hurt or the betrayal. But it was something. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But acknowledgement, recognition. The understanding that she'd been right to fight, right to refuse erasure, right to demand respect. That was enough. 2 years after Verity's birth, Eveline commissioned a portrait. Not a traditional Duchess portrait with formal gown and static pose. Instead, she was painted in the castle gardens, Verity on her hip, surrounded by white roses. She was wearing burgundy, her power color now, claimed and owned. And she was smiling. Not the polite smile of a perfect duchess. The real smile of a woman who'd fought for her place and won. The portrait was hung in the Great Hall, opposite Alaric's own formal Duke portrait. Visitors commented on the contrast, his formal and distant, hers warm and alive. Eveline liked the contrast. It felt accurate. When Verity was old enough to ask questions, Eveline would tell her the truth. about the fight, the courage it took, the price paid for dignity and respect. She'd tell her daughter that being kind didn't mean being weak, that love without respect was worthless, that sometimes the quietest women made the loudest statements when they finally chose to speak. And she'd tell her that being Duchess meant more than wearing a crown. It meant protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. It meant fighting for what was right, even when it was hard. It meant refusing to disappear. The lessons she'd learned the hard way, Verity would learn from birth. That was the greatest gift Eveline could give her. Standing in front of her portrait now, 5 years after everything had changed, Eveline barely recognized the woman she'd been. That frightened, isolated Duchess in the West Wing seemed like a stranger. "Mama!" Verity ran up, her dark curls bouncing. At 5, she was bright and fearless and completely unaware of the battles fought before she could remember. "Mama, Lord Benedict says I can learn to ride horses." "Does he now?" Eveline scooped up her daughter, settling her on one hip despite the growing weight. "And what did you say?" "I said yes! I want to ride the fastest horse." "Of course you do," Eveline laughed. "You know who you remind me of?" "Who?" "Someone very brave who didn't let anyone tell her she couldn't do something just because it was hard." "Who?" "You'll understand when you're older." Eveline kissed her daughter's forehead. "But for now, just know that you come from a long line of women who fight for what they want. And that's something to be proud of. Even if it's hard? Especially if it's hard. The best things usually are." Verity considered this seriously, then squirmed to be put down. "I'm going to tell Uncle Benedict I'm ready for lessons." She ran off, leaving Eveline smiling in her wake. The duchy was thriving. Infrastructure improvements had transformed the northern estates. Trade agreements Eveline had negotiated brought prosperity. The council functioned smoothly with dual leadership, she and Alaric coexisting professionally, if not personally. It wasn't the fairy tale she'd imagined when she first married, but it was real. It was earned. And it was hers. That evening, as sunset painted the gardens in shades of gold and rose, Eveline stood among her white roses and allowed herself a moment of pride. She'd survived. More than survived, she'd thrived. She'd taken the worst thing that could happen to her and transformed it into the foundation for something better. The crown she'd seen Celine wear in that mirror, it had never really been about the physical crown at all. It had been about claiming her place, refusing to be erased, understanding her own worth, and that was something no one could ever take from her again. Verity's laughter echoed from somewhere in the gardens, followed by Benedict's deeper voice. Her daughter was growing up surrounded by people who loved her, in a duchy that valued strength and kindness equally. Eveline had fought for that, had bled for it, literally. And standing here now, watching the last light fade from the sky while white roses bloomed all around her, she knew with absolute certainty that it had been worth it. Every painful moment, every terrifying decision, every ounce of courage she'd had to scrape together. Worth it. Because she'd refused to disappear. And in doing so, she'd ensured that her daughter would never have to. That was victory enough for any lifetime. The white roses swayed in the evening breeze, survivors blooming in defiance of everyone who'd tried to cut them down. Just like her.